Chapter 1899. Okay, I haven't bought a house here yet. I've been staying at the hotel. Let's go back to the hotel together. Huaijuan said excitedly. Siammi. Huaijuan was staying at the police station's guest house. He had a suite here, and before he bought a house he was staying here. The people in the guest house evidently knew Huaijuan, and they weren't surprised that he'd brought someone back. They thought that he was meeting with a witness or an informant, and naturally, no one bothered him. Let's start now, we've learned from last time. Lin Yi smiled. Okay. Huaijuan nodded heavily and sat in front of Lin Yi, extending his hands and letting Lin Yi lock his meridians. He then started channeling his practitioner's arts. Leveling up was a walk in the park for Huaijuan as well. He started channeling the first stage of the art of dragon mastery, converting all the energy in his body into the pure energy Huaijuan needed, flowing into his meridians without end. Huaijuan's strength also broke through from golden late phase peak to mystic, rising all the way to mystic early phase peak, mystic mid phase, mystic late phase peak. Perhaps because of Lin Yi's increase in strength, Huaijuan didn't need to compress his qi when he broke through from golden late phase peak to mystic early phase. There was still a barrier, but Lin Yi helped him break through easily. In other words, Huaijuan felt the pain of breaking through a bottleneck, but it wasn't as intense as Yutian and Lingshan's mystic late phase peak. Huaijuan had already reached it, but Lin Yi didn't stop. He suddenly had an idea. Would it work if he used the second stage of the art of dragon mastery to compress his qi to help Huaijuan break through? One had to know that the purity of the qi produced by the second stage of the art of dragon mastery wasn't something the first stage could compare to. The difference was so huge that even Lin Yi was shocked. If he used the second stage to compress his qi, perhaps he really might be able to break through. Thinking of this, Lin Yi asked in a deep voice, Junzi, I'm going to help you break through from the mystic rank to the earth rank. Are you okay with that? It might be very painful, and you might even fail at the last step, causing your meridians to be crippled. However, I can still repair them. Since it can be repaired, then what were they waiting for? Come on, boss. There's no way we can increase our strength without taking some risks. Huaijuan said calmly after hearing Lin Yi's words. Huaijuan might have hesitated if his meridians were completely destroyed, but Lin Yi could repair them even if they were destroyed. The worst-case scenario was that he'd just have to suffer a bit of pain, and it'd be a waste of time. If he succeeded, he would become even more powerful. Was there even a need to choose? He believed that all cultivators would choose the latter. Alright then, bear with it. With that, Lin Yi switched from the first stage of the art of dragon mastery to the second stage. Although he wasn't familiar with the second stage yet, switching between the two stages was still a piece of cake for Lin Yi. Lin Yi started trying to compress his qi with the second stage of the art of dragon mastery. But to his surprise, he realized that it was extremely difficult to compress his qi. Compared to the first stage, the difference was like heaven and earth. The qi formed by the second stage of the art of dragon mastery seemed to be very pure, and it didn't allow Lin Yi to compress it any further. Soon, a layer of sweat formed on Lin Yi's forehead, and there was no progress in compressing his qi. Huaijuan was very puzzled. Lin Yi's qi suddenly stopped, but Lin Yi looked like he was working hard on something. Huaijuan didn't feel anything at all, and so he didn't dare ask anything even though he was puzzled. He could only cooperate silently. Lin Yi was panicking. He could use the qi in the second stage when he was searching for the practitioner's arts, but it was a little uncontrollable when it came to compressing it. It was as if he couldn't control it at all. The qi was gathered by Lin Yi, and when he tried to compress it, it either slipped away or dissipated on its own. How strange. Lin Yi didn't believe that he couldn't control the qi in his body. What was the point of practicing the art of dragon mastery then? Gritting his teeth, Lin Yi gave up on compressing a large amount of qi from before, choosing to compress a smaller area instead. This time, it had some effect. The qi was still uncontrollable, but under Lin Yi's forceful compression, it slowly shrunk to a certain size. Lin Yi was overjoyed, and didn't dare stay any longer. He immediately sent the compressed qi into Huaijuan's meridians. Huaijuan felt Lin Yi's qi pouring into his body once more. He'd been prepared for it. But the sudden release and expansion of the qi still made him feel like his meridians were about to explode. Huaijuan's roar had turned all of his clothes to ash, but the pure energy ripple that had been generated in that instant was enough to destroy everything around him. A trace of joy flashed across Lin Yi's eyes. When he broke through to Earth class, he was in the same situation as Huaijuan. But soon, the joy in Lin Yi's eyes turned into disappointment. Huaijuan didn't break through to Earth class, and the qi wave on his body had stopped. Lin Yi could tell with one look that his strength was still at mystic late phase peak. Huaijuan had broken through to Earth class with his help, but he didn't succeed. This kind of situation often happened when other practitioners tried to break through on their own. It wasn't that easy to break through a barrier, especially a barrier like this. It was extremely difficult for a practitioner to break through a barrier, especially a barrier like this. Most of them had to try multiple times before they broke through. And people like Lin Yi who broke through on the first try were rare, except for the inheritors. Of course, breaking through with Lin Yi's help was a different story. Foot. Huaijuan let out a long breath, a trace of disappointment in his eyes. He knew his own situation very well. He'd failed at the last moment. He was about to break through to Earth class, but he didn't have enough qi to continue the breakthrough. Huaijuan had experienced situations like this before in his training, so he wasn't too surprised. Huaijuan smiled at the depressed look on Lin Yi's face. Captain Eagle, don't tell me this little setback's enough to make you depressed? It's normal for practitioners to fail to break through. Chapter 1900. Just a little bit more and I might have succeeded. Lin Yi smiled bitterly, but the amount of qi he'd compressed was the limit of what Lin Yi could handle. Any more and Lin Yi wouldn't be able to control it. Yeah, that means there's hope. If it doesn't work this time, we'll try again in the future. I'm just a lab rat anyways, and I'll be staying in Donghai from now on. It'll be convenient for us to see each other. Huaijuan smiled. Haha, you're right. Lin Yi nodded, feeling a little better. Huaijuan was right. He might not be able to do it this time, but there would be chances in the future. Lin Yi had thought it through as well. The second stage of the art of dragon mastery wasn't as smooth as the first stage, probably because he'd just started practicing it. The incantations for each stage weren't as detailed as the divisions of strength, but if you were to divide each stage into 10 stages, Lin Yi was only at the second stage of the second stage. He'd just reached the second stage, and could barely use the incantations for the second stage. He was a far cry from being familiar with it. Previously, when he used the first level of the mental cultivation method to compress his true qi, he had already broken through to the first level of perfection. Naturally, he could control the true qi in his body freely, and he could even use his true qi to transmit his voice. However, if he wanted to use the second level of the mental cultivation method to do this, it would be quite impossible. Lin Yi was like a beginner when it came to the second stage. He hadn't even grasped the basics yet, so there was no way he could do anything with it. Lin Yi calmed down at the thought, remembering Jiao Lao's words. More haste, less speed. Indeed, the situation this time had proven that he only needed to be more familiar with the second stage of the art of dragon mastery. It should be possible to raise Huaijuan to the Earth class. Things that couldn't be done on the first stage were a lot easier on the second. Of course, Lin Yi wasn't too surprised. Lin Yi would have just stayed at the first stage until he was old if he couldn't make any progress with each stage. Why would he bother with the second stage if he was already familiar with it? I'll go back and consolidate my strength, and I'll try to break through on my own once I'm done. The next time I break through by myself, with your help, we might be able to break through in one go. Huaijuan said. I'm afraid it's impossible to try it myself. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. There is actually a drawback to helping you increase your strength. I didn't notice it before, but now I've discovered that you can no longer cultivate on your own. Ah, Huaijuan paused. Lin Yi's words struck a chord with him. Huaijuan had tried to break through to the peak late phase of the golden class on his own after he got back, but nothing happened after a couple of attempts. He thought that he was busy with work. He couldn't calm his heart down, but now it seemed that this wasn't the case. Ling Shan and the others already know about it. I only found out about it later. I'm really sorry. Laney explained as he looked at the stunned Huaijuan. Eagle, what are you talking about? My strength is all thanks to you. Not only that, you're the one who saved my life. Let's not talk about when we were on missions. How many times has our team been saved because of you? Even the last few times you've done me a favor that can't be measured with words. Huaijuan said. Mystic late phase peak. That's the dream of so many practitioners. Huaijuan wasn't praising. He was just stating the truth. Even a noble house would have a hard time producing a mystic late phase peak practitioner, let alone a regular practitioner. Of course, they wouldn't be able to compete with the hidden houses or the ancient sections. Huaijuan was from a noble house, so his vision was limited to the common world. As long as you don't have any psychological burden. Linny nodded and looked at the sky outside. It's getting late, I'm going back. The two girls at home are going to check on me. Haha, let's go, I'll send you. Huaijuan laughed, but realized that he wasn't wearing anything when he stood up. He felt a little awkward. Wait for me, I'm going to change right away. Huaijuan sent Lin Yi to the villa in the Shueshang district, and found out where Lin Yi's house was. What surprised Lin Yi was that his Cherokee had been driven back, and was parked in the parking lot in the villa's yard. It seemed like the miss must have come back in a fit of anger, because she couldn't find him. She had a key to the car as well. Laney quickly took out his phone, and turned it on. Laney was worried that he'd be disturbed when he helped Huaijuan level up, so he turned his phone off. The miss must have called him a couple of times. Is sis-in-law angry? Huaijuan blinked as he looked at Lin Yi, who was smiling bitterly. What sis-in-law? It's not like you don't know my relationship with them. Lin Yi shrugged. Tang. Huaijuan was just about to say that Tang Yin wasn't here, but a voice interrupted him before he could finish his sentence. Young bro, so you're the one who kidnapped Shield bro. Yushu came running out of the yard before Huaijuan could finish. Mengyao and Yushu had just come back as well. Mengyao had been calling Lin Yi, but Lin Yi's phone was turned off. She'd waited for more than an hour at school, and his phone was still turned off. Mengyao was both angry and worried, so she drove back first. Mengyao wasn't worried that something had happened to Lin Yi. What could possibly happen to him at school? Mengyao thought that Lin Yi might have gone out with Wang Xinyan, since they'd been together for the past couple of days. The thought of Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan together made Mengyao's heart feel like it was being squeezed by something. She was just about to call Lin Yi again, when she heard the sound of a car parked outside the villa. The two turned around out of curiosity, only to see Lin Yi and Huaijuan getting out of the car, and Huaijuan making fun of her and Shu. Mengyao didn't know why, but her face only reddened. She wasn't angry at all. Huaijuan's next words, however, sent a chill down Mengyao's spine. Tang what? Wasn't it Tang Yin? Mengyao wanted to stop him, but Shu reacted faster than her, running out first. Mengyao let out a breath of relief. Yeah, he's looking for me. I'm helping him level up, but his phone's turned off. You guys can't reach me? Lin Yi said, not noticing that Huaijuan was halfway through his sentence. Target equals _blank. Chapter 1901. Hashtag X00A0 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 Hashtag X00A0, because it was a meaningless word to Lin Yi. Tang what? Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0. Yeah. We saw that your phone was turned off, so we drove back first. Mengyao's heart relaxed a little at the sight of Lin Yi and Huaijuan coming back together. Even she didn't know why she felt so relaxed. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0. Could it be that she didn't want him to be with Xinyan? But Xiaoxiao had said yesterday that Lin Yi was allowed to find a first wife. What was he supposed to do with Wang Xinyan? Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0. Alright, I'll head back first then. Huaijuan said with a wave of his hand, getting into the car. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Okay, see you later. Lenny nodded. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Mingyao and Yushu sighed in relief as they watched the Audi A6 drive away. Luckily, Yushu reacted quickly, or else they wouldn't know how to explain Tang Yin. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Most of the people around Lenny had confessed, but Huaijuan hadn't returned to Songshan yet. Mingyao decided that she'd have to give him a call when she got back and tell him not to spill the beans. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Lenny, let's eat together. Granny Sun is ready, Mingyao said, but her expression was much warmer. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 You drove the car back first. Are you angry? Lenny looked at Mingyao and Yushu, but didn't see anything wrong with their faces. It was as if they weren't angry at all. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 No, we're a little tired, so we drove back first. You're in good health anyway, so it doesn't matter if you don't have a car. Mingyao made up a random excuse. You better tell us when you're out next time. We don't want to wait for you at school. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 I did lose track of time today. Lenny nodded as he looked at Mingyao. Was this concern for him? However, the eldest miss always had this kind of expression, so he couldn't tell what she was really thinking. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Mingyao didn't say anything else as they entered the villa. Grandma Sun knew that they were back, so she started putting the dishes on the table. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Grandma Sun originally said that she would eat after Lenny and Mingyao finished eating, but after Lenny and Mingyao asked a few times, she ate with them. After all, there were only 4 people in the house, and the table wasn't crowded. There was no need to separate. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Plus. In those tough years, Mingyao and Yushu had always eaten with Grandma Sun, and they were used to it. Now that Grandma Sun suddenly became a housekeeper and had to separate, they weren't used to it. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Grandma Sun. Have you ever thought about finding another partner? Lenny suddenly remembered Faubert's call and asked casually. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Ah. Grandma Sun paused and looked at Lenny in confusion. Mr. Lin, are you saying that you want me to get married again? Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 You're already so old, and you have no one to rely on in the future. You should find another partner, Lenny said. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 This. Mr. Lin, you want me to leave? Grandma Sun didn't quite understand Lin Yi's meaning, and thought that Lin Yi wanted her to leave. Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Hashtag X00A0 Lin Yi. What do you mean by this? Mingyao was also a bit confused by Lin Yi's sudden question. She glared at Lin Yi and told him not to talk nonsense. She would be the first to disagree if he wanted to chase Grandma Sun away. If Grandma Sun hadn't taken them in during those difficult years, she, Shu, and even Lin Yi would have been found by Yulu and died without a burial place. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 Grandma son. You misunderstood. I mean, it just so happens that I know a person who is also single. He is about the same age as you. I also talked to him about this a while ago. I want you to meet him. If you like, you can live together. It can be considered a companion. Lenny said. Hashtag X00A0 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 hashtag X00A. 0 hashtag X00A0 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 hashtag X00 80 hashtag X00, A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 Grandma son was talking about Lenny being a practitioner and being hunted down by House U. These things naturally couldn't be told to normal people, so Grandma son rejected Lenny directly. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0. This person isn't an outsider. Speaking of which, he's our housekeeper in Songshan. Lenny smiled. We're all family. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 Ah. Lenny, you're talking about Faubert. Mengyao finally understood what Lenny meant. Her eyes lit up as she looked at Grandma's son and thought about Faubert. Indeed, Faubert had always been single, but he really was a couple with Grandma's son. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 Grandma's son. You and Faubert are both single. You can be a couple. Yushu happily agreed. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 That's. Grandma's son wasn't as conflicted as before when she heard that Lin Yi was a housekeeper in Songshan and was also single. However, she hadn't thought about these things for a long time. Now that she was suddenly asked to find a man, she wasn't used to it. Mr. Lin, I know that you mean well, but I don't remember if I have a husband or a child, and I don't remember how they are. Plus, I haven't thought about these things. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0. Haha. Then let's meet first. Let's leave everything to fate and get to know each other. Linny smiled. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 Then I'll listen to Mr. Lin. Grandma's son said, but didn't expect too much. She'd gotten used to being alone after all these years, and she didn't want to waste Lin Yi's good intentions. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 On the morning of the 11th, Lin Yi drove Mengyao and Yushu to the economics building and parked the car back in the parking lot. He saw that it was about time, so he didn't go back to his dorm and went straight to the biology building. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 As expected, Bai Weitua, Song Xiaodao, and Zhao Shunji were already sitting in the third row, and Xinyan was still sitting in the window seat. The seat beside her was still empty. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 Linny, over here. Bai Weitua chuckled as he pointed at the seat next to Xinyan. Hashtag X00A0 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 hashtag X00A0. She didn't know why she was sitting here again, and she didn't know why she'd left a spot for Lin Yi. As far as she was concerned, Lin Yi wouldn't be sitting here again, would he? Otherwise, she could have sat on the right and left 2 empty seats on the left. That way, it would be impossible for Lin Yi to sit over. Hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 hashtag X00A0 Lin Yi smiled and sat down beside Xinyan naturally. Lin Yi had an inexplicable fondness for Xinyan, perhaps because she was the first girl he'd met since coming to Songshan. Thank you for using China Mobile's mobile phone to read. Traffic is free, except for listening to books. Passing by. Actually, being a passerby is a great profession. Scene 1 Annihilation 0. The OP didn't get any replies for a long time. The OP would feel like his presence was weak, and that he wasn't being followed by anyone at all. When a passerby said passing by, the OP would suddenly feel like he was being followed after all. Of course, his mood would improve, and he'd feel how beautiful the world was, how fresh the air was, how much more food he'd eaten. His back no longer hurt, and how nimble his limbs were. Ahem, I digressed. Scene 2 Desolation. When no one has posted or replied to a post for a long time, a passerby passed by and the post moved. People found something to talk about again, and so the OP came alive again. Flowers needed leaves to support them, and even the biggest movie needed passersby. Passing by was one of the most important phrases to use when replying to a post. Actually, being a passerby is a great profession. Scene 1 Annihilation 0. The OP didn't get any replies for a long time. The OP would feel like his presence was weak, and that he wasn't being followed after all. When a passerby said passing by, the OP would suddenly feel like he was being followed after all. Of course, his mood would improve, and he'd feel how beautiful the world was, how much more food he'd eaten. His back no longer hurt, and how nimble his limbs were. Ahem, I digressed. Scene 2 Desolation. When no one has posted or replied to a post for a long time, a passerby passed by and the post moved. People found something to talk about again, and so the OP came alive again. Flowers needed leaves to support them, and even the biggest movie needed passersby. Of course, passing by was one of the most important phrases to use when replying to a post. Target equals _ blank. Chapter 1902. Their first encounter on the train had left a deep impression. Otherwise, with Lin Yi's personality, he wouldn't have bothered with Xinyan's business in the business district. Book Ocean Pavilion Net. I'm sorry about the day before yesterday. I made your girlfriend misunderstand. Xinyan saw Lin Yi sitting beside her, and for some reason, she felt relieved. It was as if she wanted him to sit beside her. But Xinyan didn't think that she had fallen in love with Lin Yi. Her thoughts were similar to Lin Yi's. The two of them seemed to be fated, and it could only be said that they had a good impression of each other. Xinyan, of course, didn't forget about her engagement. Since it was an engagement, it didn't matter whether she liked him or not. Oh, they're not my girlfriends, Lin Yi said. They're not. Xinyan paused, feeling a little excited. Weren't they? That's good. But Xinyan didn't know why she was so excited. Even if they weren't, Lin Yi still had girlfriends. Perhaps she was happy because Lin Yi treated her as a friend, and didn't hide anything from her? My elders asked me to take care of them. Lin Yi didn't lie to Xinyan. When he first came to Songshan, it was indeed old Lin who asked him to come. Book Ocean Pavilion Net. So that's how it is. You guys live together? Xinyan regretted asking the question. She wasn't a gossipy person. Why did she suddenly ask Lin Yi this question? It wasn't polite. Yeah, I bought a villa nearby, and the three of us live together with a butler. Lin Yi nodded. Xinyan nodded. If that was the case, then it wasn't cohabitation, it was just sharing a room. The villa was so big, it wasn't much different from living in a dorm at school. Xinyan shook her head at the thought. Her thoughts were a little messy today. What was she thinking about all these random things for? At that moment, Boss Bai walked into the classroom, and the classroom quieted down. Xinyan snapped out of her daze and looked at the podium. That's right, they're all here. I thought there would be people who would ask for leave to avoid military training. Boss Bai said casually. If you are really sick, I won't force you. However, a few years ago, a student pretended to be sick and directly disqualified me from the final exam. He had to repeat the exam with the next student. When everyone heard Boss Bai's words, they couldn't help but feel a chill. This old man was really ruthless. To recultivate with the next cohort, wouldn't that be equivalent to going to college for 5 years? However, thinking that Boss Bai must be an expert in medicine, it was impossible to pretend to be sick in front of him. 2 students in the classroom who were about to take out their medical records and ask for leave immediately stopped. Next, I'll rearrange the class leaders. Bai Weitua, you'll be the class leader, and Wang Xinyan, you'll be the vice class leader and study commissary. With that, Boss Bai didn't allow the students to question him at all. He moved on to the next thing. In a while, there will be a bus to take you to the military training, but our Donghai Industry University's military training has always been known for being the strictest. This time, you'll be going to the border guards nearby, so be prepared. Wang Xinyan was a bit stunned. She looked at Lin Yi, not understanding how she had become the vice class leader and study commissary. Bai Weitua, on the other hand, had expected this result, so he didn't feel anything out of place. He only thought to himself, only Big Bro Lin can change my stubborn grandpa's mind, right? Everyone in the class had heard about the strictness of the military training in Donghai Industry University. The 2 students who had wanted to pretend to be sick had given up because they heard that the military training was too strict. It was said that this was real military training, and it was a completely different concept from the military training in high school. But after the training, their bodies were indeed strengthened. However, Coiling Tiger Right looked at the nervous and scared students in the class with a disdainful look on his face. Coiling Tiger Right was an elixir maker, but he was still a golden class cultivator. His body was much stronger than normal students, and no matter how crazy the military training was, he wouldn't feel any pressure. Okay, that's all. Let's gather in front of the teaching building of the biology department later. The military training is based on each department. There will be a transport vehicle to take you to the military training site. After saying that, Boss Bai was ready to leave. No way, we're going somewhere else. When the students in the class heard that they had to leave for the military training, they immediately became a little anxious. They also had other high school classmates who had applied for other universities, and their military training had already ended. However, they were all training in school. It was relatively rare for them to go directly to the army for military training. Yeah, let's go buy something delicious. We won't be able to buy anything if we go there. Another student said anxiously. Oh, right, a reminder. Boss Bai was just about to leave when he turned around and reminded them. During the military training, you're not allowed to bring snacks, clothes, or personal belongings. We'll provide you with food and lodging, and you'll have to hand in all your belongings and return them after the training. Ah, no way. Boss Bai's words made those students who were about to go shopping feel discouraged. At around 10 o'clock in the morning, rows of military buses stopped in front of the biology faculty's teaching building. The medicine faculty was relatively small, with less than 30 people in total, so they took a separate bus. After everyone had boarded the bus, it started slowly and drove toward the military training site. Military training was based on classes, so every bus was filled with students from a class. Some specializations had more students in their classes, so there were even 3 students squeezed into one seat. As for the medical specialization, the entire specialization sat in one bus, and there were still empty seats. Lin Yi was wondering if he should still sit with Xinyan when he saw Bai Weitua, Song Xiaodao, and Zhao Xingji sitting in the last row, with other students sitting next to them. It was obvious that they didn't want to leave a seat for Lin Yi. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile bitterly as he sat next to Xinyan. We're sitting together again, what a coincidence. Lin Yi was a little awkward, it was a little too obvious. Yeah, Xinyan blushed, thinking that it wasn't a coincidence at all. It was clearly intentional, but she didn't say it. Right, Coiling Tiger, yellow hair, and purple hair sat in a seat far away from Lin Yi. Right, Coiling Tiger hated and feared Lin Yi, and wanted to cause trouble for Lin Yi, but he wasn't strong enough. He could only endure it for now. In fact, With the hidden house use strength, sending out another Earth-class late-phase peak wasn't a hard thing to do. But the problem was, even if they did send this person, would they be able to do anything to Lin Yi? Chapter 1903. If they were killed by Lin Yi in one move, it would be a huge loss. House Yu did have a sky-class master, but without the approval of the ancient sects, who would dare to let them out? The Heavenly Elixir sect had specifically reminded the Hidden Right family about this matter. Although Sky Elixir sect was growing stronger and had surpassed the other ancient sects, they still didn't have the ability to destroy the other ancient sections. Naturally, they couldn't be too arrogant. Has your family's matter been resolved? On the way, the other students were chatting and laughing. Only Xingyan and Lin Yi were quiet. Lin Yi felt a little awkward and found a random topic. Yes, it's been resolved. Xingyan thought about her background and sighed. Is the engagement with House Kong still there? Lin Yi asked. Yeah. Xingyan nodded. She didn't know why, but she was frustrated. She didn't like this marriage before, but she didn't want to marry Xiaolong as much as she did now. She didn't want to marry Xiaolong anymore. You haven't broken the engagement? Lin Yi was surprised, but he remembered that Xiao family and House Kong were in a similar situation. Although they both had the support of hidden houses, many masters had died. The possibility of the two joining forces was very high. No, it's more or less settled. I'm in university, and I'm in Donghai. I'm afraid Xiaolong will come looking for me soon. Xingyan smiled bitterly. You don't want to marry him? Lin Yi asked. So what if I don't want to? I'm just a sacrifice for my family's interests. Xingyan shook her head. She was disappointed, and even a little dull. You don't have to marry him if you don't want to. Lin Yi sympathized with Xingyan. If Xingyan married a good man, Lin Yi would bless her. But if she married House Kong, according to Lin Yi's calculations, House Kong would be destroyed by him sooner or later. Wouldn't she become a widow if she married them? I don't want to marry. Do I have to marry you? Xingyan smiled bitterly, but for some reason, she made a joke. Wang Xingyan's face burned as soon as she heard that. She wasn't a person who liked to joke, but it made her a little embarrassed to say it out loud. Sure. Lin Yi smiled. I'm just joking with you. Xingyan's face turned even redder at Lin Yi's reply, but she was a little pleasantly surprised. It wasn't as if Lin Yi didn't look down on her at all. Lin Yi's cold demeanor earlier, Wang Xingyan still thought that she wasn't attracted to her at all. There were some men who would act cold to attract attention when they were pursuing a girl. But Wang Xingyan knew that Lin Yi wasn't that type of person. Lin Yi's coldness was really indifferent. It was as if he had seen through everything. He didn't take it to heart. I'm just joking. I can't kill Xiaolong, can I? Lin Yi laughed. You don't seem to be afraid of House Kong. Yes. Aren't you afraid? Xingyan suddenly remembered that the man in front of her wasn't a normal person either. He'd kicked House Xiao and House Kong out of the noble house ranks. And Uncle Pai Yangyang, and the others had either died at his hands or his lackey's hands. But he was still alive and well. Even though the Kong and Xiao families had strong support, they had no choice but to maintain the prosperity of their families through marriage. You don't really want me to kill Xiaolong, do you? Lin Yi asked in a low voice. Xingyan paused. She shook her head, even though she did think about it for a moment. She really wanted to ask Lin Yi to kill Xiaolong, but that idea was too crazy. It'd be fine if Lin Yi killed the guards, but if he really killed Xiaolong, wouldn't there be a lot of trouble? With that thought, Xingyan gave up on the idea. Kill him, and marry Kong Mingming? That bastard is even worse. Then kill them all, Lin Yi said. Xingyan didn't know what to say. Lin Yi looked like a gentleman. Was he a violent maniac? Kill them all just like that. Meng Yao and Yushu sat in the other car. It was an economics car. Yao, it's tough without Shield Bro's help, right? Yushu missed Lin Yi a little. She probably wouldn't be able to see him during this time. We can do it without him, Meng Yao said. Shoo, we need to learn not to rely on him too much. He'll leave one day. How can he stay in our villa forever? We're living in his villa now, Yushu said. Shield Bro won't chase us away if we don't leave. We're already in university. We'll grow up eventually. We'll have our own families and careers. Are we still going to rely on Lenny then? Mengyao sighed as she looked at the trees passing by outside the window, a little sad. She felt that she had matured quite a bit in this half a year, and was no longer that stubborn miss who didn't know anything anymore. Lenny had taught her the value of friendship, family and love, especially during those difficult times. It was a precious memory. Yao Yao, why don't you be Shield Bro's first wife? That way, you can be with him forever. Yushu suggested. Aren't you a second wife? You can be with him, right? Mengyao smiled. Yushu's eyes flashed with worry. Okay, I'll try my best. Mengyao looked at Shu strangely. She felt like something was wrong with Shu today. Wasn't she always full of confidence? Why did she say she'll try her best? It's nothing, the weather's pretty good today, Shu said. Mengyao looked at Shu confused. She didn't know what she was talking about. After the cars left the school, they drove onto the national highway. The more they drove, the more secluded they got. Eventually, they got onto a dirt road. The car's shock absorbers were pretty good, but the bumpy ride was too much for the spoiled students. They started whining, regretting that they didn't bring a cushion. Mengyao and Yushu, on the other hand, were perfectly composed. They wouldn't have been able to take this pain half a year ago, but they'd gone to the snowy valley once, and they'd been through all sorts of hardships. This was nothing compared to it. The two looked at each other and smiled. This was a rare life experience. Xingyan wasn't a spoiled child, but she'd never suffered like this before. She was still a little carsick. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to listen to her MP3 player on the train and plane. Music could reduce the dizziness. To be continued. Chapter 1904. Blurg. Xingyan felt a little nauseated. She didn't bring her MP3 player, and since they weren't allowed to bring their personal belongings during the training, she naturally wouldn't break the school's rules. What's wrong? Lenny turned around to see that Xingyan's face was a little pale, and there was a thin layer of sweat on her forehead. She looked like she was in pain. I'm a little nauseous, motion sick, I want to vomit. But as soon as the words left his mouth, a puddle of white liquid came out of his mouth and landed on Lin Yi's pants. Lenny didn't move away, nor did he look down on Xingyan. He reached out to press on her acupuncture points, but hesitated halfway. Xingyan still wanted to vomit, so Lenny didn't hesitate any longer. He put his hand under Xingyan's shirt and pressed on the acupoint on her stomach, sending a pure stream of pure qi over to calm the urge to vomit. Xingyan's carsick was obviously caused by her stomach being shaken, and that was why she felt like vomiting. Lenny only needed to straighten out her stomach and liver, and she'd be fine. However, Bai Weitua felt that the carriage was a little too monotonous, and he wanted to sing a song with his classmates to ease the monotony of the journey. But when he walked past Lin Yi, he saw Xingyan's head buried in Lin Yi's chest, and Lin Yi's hand under her clothes. Bai Weitua was shocked. Xingyan's vomiting wasn't loud, and no one in the carriage noticed, but Bai Weitua stood in the middle of the carriage and made another sound, drawing the attention of the other students. They all turned to look, and the ones who were closer saw Lin Yi and Xingyan's states clearly. They were all stunned. Isn't that it? My goddess. She's taken just like that. A guy sighed, looking up at the sky. Hearing his sigh, the other people's gazes became even more ambiguous. Lenny smiled bitterly. This Bai Weitua, of all the times he could have come, he just had to come when he was treating Xingyan's vomiting. There was no way he could explain this. However, Lenny was not a person who liked to explain things to others. In the dormitory, sometimes he would explain to Bai Weitua and the others. That was because they were his roommates. Lenny treated them as his friends. That was why he would explain to them. But other than that, he counted on Lenny to explain to others. That was simply an unrealistic thing. Bai Weitua saw Lin Yi's dumbfounded expression. Knowing that he was in trouble, he quickly walked to the front of the car and said to his classmates, "We're only halfway through the journey. Let's sing a song. It's our first group activity. What do you think?" This time, everyone's attention was diverted by Bai Weitua. Of course, although everyone was a little curious about Lin Yi's boldness, This kind of thing was also common on campus. Everyone had also familiarized themselves with the campus in the past 2 days. They also had a better understanding of the young couples who met in the woods and the swimming pool. This kind of thing was nothing between couples. So what if they touched each other? There were real fights in the swimming pool. Bai Weituo took the lead and sang a song by Su Shirhan. A song by Su Shirhan. The young people were all familiar with it, and they all liked her. Bai Weituo started singing, and the others started singing. Of course, except for Right Coiling Tiger and the others. Right Coiling Tiger was a little depressed when he heard Su Shirhan's song. It wasn't that he didn't have the idea of hitting on Su Shirhan. In fact, he went to ask Su Shirhan out, and he even wanted to ask her to play with him through her manager. But he was rejected. Right Coiling Tiger was very depressed because of this. He wanted to forcefully kidnap Su Shirhan, but he didn't think that Su Shirhan's bodyguard was a master. Although Right Coiling Tiger didn't give up, he didn't have the chance to get close to Su Shirhan. He could only give up for now. Of course, Lin Yi didn't sing, because he didn't know how to sing at all. Su Shirhan came to his house to sing a few times, but Lin Yi didn't participate. Under Lin Yi's chi, Wang Xinyan's face looked a lot better. She let out a sigh of relief and raised her head from Lin Yi's arms, but when she remembered that Lin Yi's hand was still on her stomach, her face turned red again. "I'm sorry, it was a misunderstanding." Lin Yi smiled bitterly. He didn't want to explain to others, but he had to explain to Wang Xinyan. No matter what, Wang Xinyan was his good friend, and it wouldn't look good for a girl like her to have a misunderstanding. "Thank you." Wang Xinyan was a little shy, but she wasn't angry at Lin Yi at all. Lin Yi was a very good doctor, and Wang Xinyan knew that from the beginning. Back on the business street, when Lin Yi saved Lu Zhenhu, Wang Xinyan knew that. And so, Xinyan knew that Lin Yi didn't have any other intentions. He was just trying to help her. It was embarrassing that he'd touched her stomach, but he'd done it out of good intentions. Why would she blame him? Lin Yi let go of his hand and pinched Wang Xinyan's forehead a couple of times, and Wang Xinyan felt refreshed. She didn't feel nauseous anymore, and the dizziness from before was gone as well. She felt a lot better in an instant. It was amazing. This man really was good. Wang Xinyan looked at Lin Yi, a complicated look in her eyes. Lin Yi wasn't just good at martial arts either. He'd been able to get the scammer's money back on the train, and then switch Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha's wine. This wasn't something a normal person could do. Lin Yi's skills were on par with a magician's or a thief's. But this wasn't even Lin Yi's specialty. Lin Yi's medical skills were something that Wang Xinyan couldn't help but gasp in amazement. To be able to make her sober from motion sickness in such a short amount of time, that was no ordinary feat. It was just a small ailment, but it was hard to cure it completely. She'd have to vomit for a long time every time she got carsick, and she'd have to drink a couple bottles of Huaxiang Jinqi water to recover. But all Lin Yi did was rub his abdomen and forehead. What amazing medical skills. If that wasn't enough, then Lin Yi's martial arts skills were even more amazing. Uncle Pai, Pai Yangyang, and the others were from hidden houses. They'd only be sending themselves to their deaths in front of Lin Yi and his lackeys. Just what kind of person was he? He was just a normal student in a university. She wouldn't have noticed the difference between Lin Yi and the other students if she didn't know about all this. She felt Lin Yi's hand move away from her forehead as she was lost in her thoughts. She felt a sudden reluctance to part with Lin Yi's hand. She didn't know if it was because she didn't want to let go of that refreshing feeling, or because she didn't want to let go of Lin Yi's hand. To be continued. Chapter 1905. What's there to thank me for? We're the ones who got misunderstood. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. So what if it's a misunderstanding? Xinyan shook her head as she noticed the white stain on Lin Yi's pants, along with the mucus from her own stomach. It was a disgusting mess. Xinyan hadn't eaten breakfast this morning, only drinking a bag of milk. She vomited half of it on Lin Yi's pants, feeling guilty. "I'm sorry, your pants." "Oh, it's nothing." Lin Yi didn't feel disgusted at all. It wasn't a big deal at all. Back when he was on a mission with Huaijuan, Lin Yi didn't feel disgusted at all. not to mention the mucus from poisonous flowers and plants. He'd seen it all before, let alone vomit. I'll help you wash it, Xingyan said, a little embarrassed. I heard they're giving us camouflage uniforms when we get there. I'll change out of them when we get back, Linny said casually. Yeah. Xingyan didn't say anything else, but what happened just now had brought the two of them closer. The two had known each other for a long time, but the intimate contact this time, despite the fact that it was a therapy session, made them feel a lot closer. Bai Weitua led the group to sing a couple of songs before walking to the back of the car. The group was tired after a couple of songs and needed a break, but Bai Weitua couldn't help but turn around when he passed by Lin Yi's seat. What he saw shocked him even more. It was on Lin Yi's pants. There was a puddle of milky white, dried mucus. Bai Weitua had seen them do it a couple of times before. His thoughts weren't too pure, either, so he thought of a possibility. Wasn't Wang Xingyan looking down just now? Could it be that she was helping Lin Yi, and then she choked and vomited on Lin Yi's pants? He thought he heard Xingyan retching just now. It had to be because of this. But this time, Bai Weitua didn't dare to make a ruckus. He just gave Lin Yi a thumbs up and said in a low voice, "Congratulations, Brother Lin. You got sister-in-law to help you so quickly. Hee in a place with so many people, awesome." Lin Yi was stunned, not knowing what Bai Weitua was talking about. Xingyan didn't know what was going on either. However, she could still understand the word sister-in-law. She immediately blushed and lowered her head, not daring to look at Lin Yi and Bai Weitua. Haha, I'll go back first. I won't bother you anymore. When Bai Weitua saw Lin Yi's stunned look, he thought he had seen through him. So he quickly walked back. He told Song Xiaodao and Zhao Xingji about what he saw and heard in a low voice. Just now, what did he say? Xingyan asked after Bai Weitua left. Although she knew that what Bai Weitua said was definitely not something good, she still asked out of curiosity. Besides, she and Lin Yi had nothing to do with each other, and they were good friends. She wasn't afraid of anything. Just now, he said you helped me. Help me with what? Lin Yi was confused as well. But when he looked down, he saw the white mucus on his pants. He suddenly understood, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wang Xingyan wasn't an innocent girl who didn't know anything. She had health classes in high school, and she heard about some things from her classmates. At this moment, she followed Lin Yi's gaze to Lin Yi's pants, and she finally understood what Bai Weitua meant. She was lying on Lin Yi's body just now, and he thought that she was helping Lin Yi. Thinking of this, Wang Xingyan blushed even redder. Why was this Bai Weitua's thinking so complicated? But there was no way to explain this. The more she explained, the worse it would get. Seeing Wang Xingyan's expression, Lin Yi knew that this girl understood what Bai Weitua meant. He shook his head helplessly. I'll explain to him later. Forget it, it's not a big deal. I don't need anyone to do anything to me. Wang Xingyan shook her head and stopped Lin Yi from explaining. Then, it's not good for your reputation, Lin Yi said. Chapter 1906. I think he's from the border defense, but I didn't know he was from here. Yushu had never been to her brother's army before, so she was surprised. At this moment, Chen Yutian started speaking. Hello, freshman. I'm the person in charge here, Chen Yutian. I'm also the head instructor of this military training. Donghai Industry University's military training has always been the strictest. Here, I will train you according to the requirements of our army. This is a test of your willpower, and also a strengthening of your body. In the days to come, I will arrange for you to train new recruits. Those who are the same age as you, or even those who are a year younger than you, can do it. I don't want any of you to fall behind. Although the students knew that the military training would be strict, they couldn't help but complain when they heard that Chen Yutian was training them according to the requirements of new recruits. But thinking about it, it wasn't too bad. If it was according to the requirements of veterans, it would be even more difficult for them. This time, I will also complete your training with other instructors. I will be the instructor of one of your classes, Chen Yutian said. All instructors, get into position. Bring your class to collect camouflage uniforms and daily necessities. Arrange the dormitories. After dinner, Meet here at 6 o'clock. Yes. A row of instructors standing not far away from the stage responded in unison. What surprised Lin Yi even more was that Chen Yutian became the medical instructor. When Chen Yutian saw that Lin Yi was in the group, he was shocked and embarrassed. Once upon a time, Lin Yi was his instructor, and even now Lin Yi was still his boss, someone he respected in his heart. He didn't have the ability to be Lin Yi's instructor. He knew Lin Yi's ability very well. It was a coincidence that he'd become a medical instructor. He'd heard that it was the best major in the school, and so he'd chosen it. He hadn't expected Lin Yi to be here as well. Lin Yi didn't care about going to university. He only wanted to accompany Meng Yao and Yushu. So Lin Yi didn't tell Chen Yutian where he went to school and which major he signed up for. Meng Yao and Yushu, on the other hand, didn't have the chance to talk to Chen Yutian too much because they had to escape with Lin Yi. The only time they met was in the hospital, and after that, Chen Yutian went back to the army. They didn't have the chance to talk about these things. Lin Yi smiled at Chen Yutian and made a shushing gesture. Chen Yutian naturally understood that Lin Yi didn't want to expose his identity. This put Chen Yutian at ease. Lin Yi wasn't someone who was easy to talk to, but he was very easy to talk to his friends. Chen Yutian brought the 20 or so medical students to a row of houses. This is your dorm, boys and girls share the same bed. You must take off your clothes when you sleep at night, and you must wake up when you hear the number in the middle of the night. Now guys and girls, come and get your camouflage uniforms and necessities. What Chen Yutian said was what he always said to the students during military training. Although he rose in rank due to his contributions, he started from the lowest rank as an officer. He had been an instructor for these students for many years, so he said these words casually. But after he said it, he felt that something was wrong. There was only one girl in the medical faculty. In the past, there wasn't a single girl in the medical faculty. Although there were more boys than girls in the classes Chen Yutian taught before, there was never a situation where there was only one girl. It should be known that when the university divided students into classes according to their major, they would also distribute the number of boys and girls in a balanced way. Although there were very few girls in majors like computer science and office automation, there would still be 8 to 10 girls in a class of 30. Even if it was a little less, there would definitely be more than one girl. When there were a lot of girls, it wasn't a big deal to sleep with guys at night. After all, they were all wearing clothes, and the girls would always be in a group, far away from the guys. But this was the first time Chen Yutian encountered a situation where there was only one girl. He was in a difficult position. How was he supposed to live here? Was he supposed to let a girl sleep with a bunch of guys at night? It was fine even if there was one more guy to keep her company. This way, a girl couldn't go to the bathroom or take a shower without someone to keep her company. It was inconvenient. Chen Yutian glanced at the name list in his hand and said, Wang Xinyan, you're the only girl in the class, and it might be inconvenient for you to rest at night. Do you want me to transfer you to another class? Wang Xinyan froze. To be honest, it was inconvenient for her to be the only girl in the class, but at least there were a few familiar classmates and her best friend Lin Yi. If she was transferred to a class full of strangers, she would feel even more uncomfortable. Seeing Wang Xinyan in a daze, Bai Weitua stood up and said, Reporting to the instructor. I'm the class monitor, Bai Weitua. Wang Xinyan is Lin Yi's girlfriend. There's no inconvenience. He was the class monitor, and naturally, he had to stand up at this time. Besides, Lin Yi was his big brother, and Wang Xinyan was his best friend. The vice monitor was Wang Xinyan, and it was inappropriate for Wang Xinyan to report herself. It was better for him, the class monitor, to take the lead. Bai Weitua had gotten the military training rules before, and he knew how to report to the instructor, so he did it meticulously. Chen Yutian looked at Lin Yi in surprise. As expected, Wang Xinyan was standing together with Lin Yi. He was puzzled. Since when did Wang Xinyan become Lin Yi's girlfriend? However, he saw Wang Xinyan's blushing face, and Lin Yi didn't say anything, so he nodded. All right, Bai Weitua, return to the team. Since that's the case, get the camouflage uniforms and supplies. We'll eat at the canteen at 5. And be back here at 6. Yes. Bai Weitua replied and returned to the team. At this time, some soldiers used a pickup truck to pull a truck full of supplies. Chen Yutian waved at Bai Weitua, asking him to help distribute the supplies. After collecting the supplies, the students went to the terrace house to rest. The terrace house was actually a large shared bed. The conditions weren't very good, but it was arranged this way to train everyone's will of hardships. Chapter 1907. Xingyan snapped back to her senses after taking the supplies. She'd been mistaken as Lin Yi's girlfriend again. But it wasn't the first time. Big bro Lin, why don't you take Xingyan to a place to change? We guys are too lazy to go to the washroom to change, so we'll just close the door and change in the house. Bai Weitua said as he saw Lin Yi walk in with Xingyan. Ah, all right. Lin Yi shook his head helplessly. She wanted him to take Xingyan to get changed? Where would they go to change? There's a public washroom not too far from here. I think they go there to change. Xingyan saw the frown on Lin Yi's face and understood what Lin Yi was thinking. Public washroom? Lin Yi paused and turned his head. There was indeed a public restroom not too far from his camp, 2 camps away from him. There was a long line for the girls though. There were fewer people on the boys' side, but there was a long line for the girls. Lin Yi understood immediately. Most guys didn't care. And even if they didn't go to the washroom, they'd just find a place to change their clothes. Girls, on the other hand, wouldn't change in front of so many people. But how long would it take for Xingyan to wait in line? Xingyan, on the other hand, could see that it was troublesome as well. Girls took longer to change than guys, too. So the line would probably take a few hours. Maybe you can hide behind the house, and I'll keep a lookout? Lin Yi looked at the back of the townhouse. There was a fence, but there was nothing behind it other than a cement ditch. It was very clean, with not even a speck of mud in it. Xingyan hesitated, feeling a little embarrassed at first, but then she remembered that Lin Yi had touched her stomach. What was there to be embarrassed about? There were a lot of people in the washroom, too. Xingyan nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. Xingyan jumped into the ditch carefully, not because she was afraid of Lin Yi peeking. She didn't know why, but she had this strange trust in Lin Yi. She jumped into the ditch because she didn't want anyone to see her. She quickly took off her clothes in the gutter and looked at the bra she was wearing. She hesitated for a moment. She'd have to train later, and she'd have to sleep with her clothes on at night. It'd be very uncomfortable to wear the bra, and it'd be troublesome to take it off again. Might as well take it off now. With that in mind, Xingyan unbuttoned her bra and took it off, placing it on top of the top she'd just taken off. She was just about to put her tank top back on when an irritating autumn wind blew at her, sending her bra flying into the air. Xingyan's bra didn't have any silicone in it, and it didn't have any massage functions. It was just a normal light type. The camp was very empty too. Ah! Xingyan yelped as she looked at her bra being blown away. She reached out to grab it. Lin Yi had his back turned, waiting for Xingyan to change her clothes. It wasn't that he didn't like Xingyan, and he wanted to peek, but Lin Yi didn't think it was right. He was a man of principles, and so he didn't turn around. But Xingyan's scream gave Lin Yi a fright. Xingyan wouldn't be in trouble, would she? Or would some gangster come over? Lin Yi quickly turned around and looked in Xingyan's direction. In actuality, Lin Yi had turned his head around so easily because Xingyan was standing in the gutter. There were tall stone steps blocking his view, and as long as he crouched down, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to see her at all. But then, Xingyan got up to grab her bra. Her arms spread wide, and the white of her chest entered Lin Yi's line of sight. Ugh! Lin Yi gulped. There was only one thought in his mind when he saw Xingyan's chest. So big, so white. He didn't think that Xingyan's chest wouldn't look that big when she wore it. But when she took it off, it was full of assets. It wasn't as big as shoes, but it was at least a few levels bigger than Miss. In fact, this was also the result of Xingyan wearing a thin bra. Xingyan didn't purposely squeeze her chest, and she usually wore casual clothes. Of course it wouldn't be seen. Seeing Lin Yi turn around, Xingyan was stunned. Her hands were raised in the air, and she forgot to pull them back. She didn't know what to do. But the next moment, Xingyan understood what Lin Yi was looking at. Her face reddened as she covered her chest and crouched down, not daring to come out of the gutter. She didn't dare to come out. Xingyan's face reddened as she realized what Lin Yi was looking at. Lin Yi finally understood why Xingyan was screaming, and what she was trying to do with her wings spread. Her bra had been blown away by the autumn wind. And not only had it flown away, it had flown all the way to the rooftop of the house. Lin Yi was speechless. He'd wanted to wait for Xingyan to change her clothes and pick it up himself. After all, it wasn't a good idea for him to pick it up, but now he really had to do it himself. Xingyan couldn't do it at all. Shaking his head, Lin Yi flew to the roof. The row house was tall, but it wasn't much in Lin Yi's eyes. It only took a few leaps for him to reach the roof. Xingyan's bra was hanging on a piece of debris on the roof. Lin Yi picked up the bra, and a gust of wind blew against his face again. This time, it brought with it a real fragrance, like the body fragrance of a young girl. It was very pleasant. Lin Yi paused, and then realized that it was the fragrance of Xingyan's bra. The scent sent a shiver down Lin Yi's spine. It felt cool and refreshing. Xingyan wasn't someone who liked to put on makeup, and he could tell that she didn't use perfume or anything like that from how she usually wore no makeup. Could it be the legendary body fragrance? Lin Yi wasn't sure. As he was thinking, he heard someone calling him from below. Big Brother Lin? Bai Weitua finished changing and walked out of the row house. He raised his head and saw Lin Yi standing on the beam, not knowing what he was doing. Bai Weitua? Lin Yi turned around and saw Bai Weitua, but his hand was still holding Xingyan's bra. He felt a little awkward. Bai Weitua also saw the bra in Xingyan's hand. His admiration for Lin Yi was like the yellow river flowing from the sky into the sea, never to return. Big Brother Lin, you're amazing, you're amazing. You're doing it with your sis-in-law on the roof. You're so much better than those car shock bro and boobs bro. You're the roof bro. Bai Weitua gave a thumbs up. He had never seen a couple do it on the roof. Chapter 1908. Translator, Naibo Studio Editor. Naibo Studio Ugh. You're thinking too much. Lin Yi sweated. I went to the house just to pick up this. Xingyan's in the gutter. Gutter? That's still pretty fierce. Bai Weitua said. Lin Yi knew that there was no point in trying to explain himself. He didn't say anything else as he jumped out of the house and went to the gutter behind the house. Xingyan had already put on her clothes, but her face was still a little red, especially when Lin Yi came back with her bra. She lowered her head in embarrassment. Xingyan told herself that it was just a misunderstanding, and that it was nothing. She'd waited for Lin Yi to come back, but now that Lin Yi had come back, she was a little embarrassed. Here, Lin Yi said as he handed the bra to Xingyan. I don't want it anymore. It's yours. Xingyan was already embarrassed, and she felt even more embarrassed when Lin Yi handed it back to her. She didn't want it because she was shy, and she didn't want to take it back. That it's yours was just something that came out of her mouth, but she regretted it the moment she said it. She was a girl. How could she give a guy a used bra? Wasn't that a little too intimate? Wah. Lin Yi didn't know what to say. She gave it to him? What did that mean? Lin Yi rubbed his nose as he looked at the bra in his hands. He didn't know what to do with it. Lin Yi knew that he wasn't some kind of underwear thief, nor was he some kind of perverted underwear collector. But the smell of the bra was really nice. Should he keep it? It's nothing, Xingyan said, feeling even more embarrassed at the way he was looking at her bra. She snatched it back and stuffed it into her pocket. Ugh, didn't you give it to me? Lin Yi paused, surprised that Xingyan had snatched the bra away. Xingyan stomped her foot angrily. She wanted to stuff Lin Yi's mouth with her own. If it weren't for her own bra, she would have shoved it into Lin Yi's mouth. Would you die if you spoke less? I don't want to give it to you again. Xingyan had no choice but to say it, but things between the two were too intimate. Lin Yi scratched his head, a bitter smile on his face. It's fine if you don't want to send me off. Let's go. Xingyan picked up the clothes she'd changed out of, ready to leave. Wait. Lin Yi stopped her. What's wrong? Xingyan turned her head around. wondering if Lin Yi really wanted her bra. If he insisted, should she give it to him or not? I haven't changed yet. They're all done. If I go back and change, wouldn't I be a monkey? Lin Yi pointed at his clothes. Oh, Xingyan sighed in relief. She felt bad for misunderstanding Lin Yi. She was right. How could he be that kind of pervert? If that were the case, he'd be more than happy to go along with the flow when people mistook her as his girlfriend. He wouldn't even bother explaining himself. Xingyan felt a little guilty and shy at that thought. Then, I'll keep a lookout for you. Okay. Lin Yi nodded and jumped into the drain. But Lin Yi was a lot faster than Xingyan. He was done in a blink of an eye. Let's go, I'm done. That fast? Xingyan was surprised. I'm used to it. Lin Yi smiled. I didn't mean it. I heard you yelling, and when I turned around, I saw. Stop it. Xingyan's face reddened again. She glared at Lin Yi angrily, stomping her foot. I forgot all about it. Lin Yi looked at Xingyan. He wasn't expecting a quiet girl like her to get so worked up. He shrugged. I forgot to. Forget my ass. Don't talk about it again. Xingyan humphed. Okay. Lin Yi didn't dare say anything else, since he was in the wrong. The two came to the front of the bungalow to see Bai Weituo and his classmates sitting in groups of 2s and 3s, resting and chatting. Bai Weituo rushed over when he saw Xingyan's blushing face. Boss, you're really something, he said in admiration. You're really something, boss. Don't talk nonsense. Lin Yi glared at him. I know. Only Zhao Xingji Song Xiaodao and I know. The others don't know. Bai Weituo smiled. But the others have probably guessed it too. Indeed, when the others saw Xingyan and Lin Yi coming out from the back of the house, they all had an ambiguous look on their faces. This little bastard Lin Yi sure is enjoying life. Such a pretty girl. And he just let her be your cauldron. The yellow hair said with a sigh. I'll let Lin Yi be arrogant for a while. When I become a second-rank refiner, I'll be able to sit in the position of an elder in the House of Yu. I won't be able to send the masters of the House of Yu to kill Lin Yi, but I can do it in secret. Coiling Tiger of the Right hated Lin Yi to the bone. Besides, when I become a second-rank refiner, I'll be able to refine countless pills. I'll be able to make a fortune in the hidden auction. It won't be hard to get the Bloodcloak underworld people to kill him. Yes. The purple hair nodded. Master Yu, you're the one with the foresight. Let this Lin Yi be arrogant for a while. Arrogant? We can't fight him with our strength, but we can use other methods to annoy him and give him some trouble. It'll be fun in school, Coiling Tiger of the Right said. Then, aren't you afraid that Lin Yi will attack us? The yellow hair thought of Lin Yi and felt a chill down his spine. He in Boss Bai's class, he wouldn't be giving face to Boss Bai. If he doesn't give face to Boss Bai, that person from the Sky Elixir sect won't let it go. Knowing Boss Bai's identity, if Lin Yi dares to touch a hair of mine, it'll be suicide. I'd love for him to touch me. Coiling Tiger of the Right sneered. What Boss Bai hates the most is people from families and sects putting on airs in front of him and bullying him. Hiss. The yellow hair and purple hair knew that Boss Bai wasn't simple. Otherwise, why would the hidden House of the Right send Coiling Tiger of the Right to school? But they didn't expect Boss Bai to be this powerful. Even the Sky Elixir sect respected him. Just who was this old man? Lin Yi, naturally, didn't know that Coiling Tiger of the Right was looking for trouble with him again. He saw that everyone in the class was looking at him and Xingyan strangely, so he brought Xingyan back to the terrace house first. Chapter 1909. Xingyan, sister-in-law as strong as Lin Yi was, he couldn't do anything to his classmates. He couldn't just beat them all up, could he? It wasn't until he got back that Lin Yi realized that the bed was already filled with luggage and blankets, but there was an empty space in the innermost part. Evidently, Bai Weituo had left it for himself and Xingyan. Lin Yi didn't say anything, and put his luggage on top of it. Xingyan, on the other hand, sat in the innermost seat, hugging her legs and curled up on the bed. She was silent, not sure what she was thinking. Lin Yi didn't know how to comfort Xingyan. After all, Something so embarrassing had happened, and Linny would only make things more awkward. Come take a walk with me, Xingyan said to Linny after a while. Ah, all right. Linny didn't ask why, and just nodded in agreement. Anything Xingyan asked for now, Linny would do as long as he could. Of course, this was based on the fact that Linny had a good impression of Xingyan, and that she was a friend. If it were someone random, Linny wouldn't care. Who asked her to be careless? The two left the room, not attracting any attention from their classmates. They were all sitting on the floor, playing cards or chatting. Linny and Xingyan turned to the gutter behind the room. There was no one there. However, the two of them walked halfway when they suddenly stopped their footsteps. There was a moaning sound coming from the gutter. Xingyan's face reddened, and Linny felt a little awkward as well. He naturally knew what the sound was and turned to the source. It was probably coming from the gutter behind another row house not too far away. There was a partition between them, and they couldn't see what was going on over there. But it sounded like a couple sprinting. Xingyan couldn't see it, but it was enough to embarrass her. She couldn't help but remember the weird looks her classmates gave her when she and Linny walked out from the back. Why don't we go somewhere else? Linny sighed. These people have good stamina. They haven't eaten lunch, and dinner hasn't started yet. How can they still have the energy to do that? Nah, I'll just sit here for a bit, Xingyan said, afraid that she'd get laughed at again if she left the room. She covered her ears with her hands. All right. Linny smiled bitterly as he accompanied Xingyan to sit on the stone steps of the gutter. The wind blew past, and Xingyan's scent was refreshing. Linny felt very comfortable after taking a whiff of it. Linny closed his eyes when Xingyan didn't say anything, starting to enjoy the moment as well. The noise quieted down after a while, and then came the sound of clothes being put on. Linny nudged Xingyan with his wrist. All right, it's quiet now. That guy's a fast shooter. Xingyan blinked, but quickly understood what Linny was getting at. She glared at Linny. Fast shooter? Was he not fast? Linny smiled bitterly. What was wrong with him? Why was his mouth so fast? Did he just say that to Xingyan like that? Linny hadn't done it on purpose. He'd just been intoxicated by Xingyan's scent, and that was why he'd blurted it out. But Linny hadn't smelled Xingyan's scent in the classroom. What was going on? Could this smell be coming from? Linny looked at Xingyan's chest with a weird expression on his face. There was a bra covering it earlier, and now that it was gone, didn't that mean? What are you looking at? Xingyan jumped when she realized that Linny was staring at her chest. She thought, is Linny going to do something to me after hearing the sounds of the couple next door? Therefore, she subconsciously dodged to the side, but she lost her balance. Her whole body swayed, and she almost fell into the gutter. Linny was shocked. He quickly reached out and grabbed Xingyan's waist, pulling her back. The inertia brought Xingyan into Linny's arms. Xingyan moaned, embarrassed. She tried to push Linny away, but she didn't realize it. Linny didn't use any pure qi, and he was feeling guilty in the first place. With Xingyan's push and pull, they both fell into the gutter. But the moment they fell into the gutter, Linny was afraid that Xingyan would fall, so he held her in his arms. Linny, on the other hand, fell onto the stone floor of the gutter. It hadn't rained for a few days, and there wasn't even a drop of water in the gutter. Linny fell onto the stone floor with a dull thud. Xingyan screamed. She regretted it the moment she fell. Linny wasn't that kind of person, was he? When Linny fell onto the stone floor of the gutter, while protecting her, Xingyan regretted it even more. She shouldn't have been so willful. She pressed down on Linny and fell. How could Linny recover? Even if his bones weren't broken, he'd be bruised all over, right? In actuality, Linny was completely fine. He'd covered himself and Xingyan with pure qi the moment they fell. And even if he didn't use it, his skin was thick enough to withstand the fall. He'd survived old Lin's flying kick to the foot of West Star Mountain all those years ago. But Baiweitua rushed over just as the two fell into the gutter. Big bro Lin? Boss. He'd just received a notice that dinner was about to start, and he was supposed to gather the students at the cafeteria. But Linny and Xingyan were nowhere to be seen, and so Baiweitua ran to the back of the house to look for them. He was panicking when he saw Xingyan lying on top of Linny, the two of them rolling around. I'm sorry, big brother Lin's sister-in-law Sinyan. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Let's eat. Bai Weitua let out a sigh of relief when he saw that the two of them still had their clothes on. Obviously, the two of them had just started and hadn't reached the next step yet. Otherwise, wouldn't it be embarrassing to see the two of them naked? Still, Bai Weitua admired Lin Yi quite a bit. He'd been served by Sinyan's mouth once in the car. And then he'd done it again when they were changing clothes. Now he was going to do it a third time. What a strong man. Bai Weitua, we were just sitting here talking. And your sis-in-law Sinyan. Huh. Lin Yi awkwardly stood up with Sinyan in his arms, calling her Sinyan's sis-in-law, in the back of his mouth. Chapter 1910. The man in the dream. Lin Yi felt quite helpless. Why did he keep making these kinds of stupid mistakes today? These were all kindergarten-level mistakes. He quickly changed his words when he saw the look on Sinyan's face. You're the one who made me fall in, Sinyan. I was trying to pull her up, but I fell in as well. Sinyan's eyes lit up as she looked at Sinyan. Oh, Bai Weitua said with a look of understanding, but anyone could see that he didn't believe him at all. It was no wonder, though. Lin Yi went to pull Sinyan up when she fell down. So why was Lin Yi on the bottom and Sinyan on top? It didn't make sense at all. But in reality, Lin Yi wasn't lying. It was the truth. But no one believed the truth these days. What's with that expression? Lin Yi was speechless. It's nothing, Lin bro. It's nothing, it's just a normal thing. Bai Weitua didn't know why Lin Yi was being shy. But the guy didn't seem like the shy type at all. Alright, lead the way. Lin Yi cut Bai Weitua off when he saw that Sinyan's face was about to bleed. Let's go, the others are ready. Bai Weitua nodded and said nothing more. Sinyan bit her lips. She wanted to complain about Lin Yi, but realized that he'd done it out of kindness. She might have broken herself if he didn't save her. But thinking about it, she wouldn't have dodged if Lin Yi hadn't been staring at her breasts. She got pissed again at that thought. She stomped on Lin Yi's foot and snorted, ignoring Lin Yi as she followed Bai Weitua on her own. Lin Yi stared at Sinyan's back as she stepped on his foot, spacing out a little. It wasn't because of Sinyan's stomp, but because he seemed to remember that there was once a girl who looked at him with this kind of angry eyes before stomping on his foot and running away. Who was this person? Lin Yi frowned. It was just a fleeting feeling, but after thinking about it, he didn't think that there would be such a person. The Miss and Shu wouldn't do something like this, and Xiao Xiao was even more impossible. Who could it be? Could it be the person in my dream? Sometimes, when a person experienced something, they would have a feeling of déjà vu, as if they had experienced it in a dream or in a previous life. This was a very mysterious feeling. Many people had experienced it, but it could not be explained by science. They could only say that they had seen it in a dream. Could it be that he'd seen Wang Sinyan in his dreams? Dreamed of her stepping on him? Looking at the back of the figure walking away, unknowingly, it seemed to overlap with a certain scene in his memory. Perhaps it was really a dream? Lin Yi shook his head and quickly followed. The cafeteria here was huge, several times bigger than the cafeteria in Donghai Industry University. However, it didn't have as many sales windows as the cafeteria in Donghai Industry University. There was only a row of tables here, and on the left of the table were a few big buckets with 3 types of dishes: meat, vegetable, and soup. On the other side of the table were bowls of rice, steamed buns, and flower pots. Under the leadership of the class leaders, the students lined up, each holding a bowl and a bowl of soup. These were the daily necessities given to them during military training. Come here one by one later. There will be people to help you. Take the rice and other staples yourselves. But I hope you'll get into the habit of taking less and taking more. If you can't finish it when you take it back, if it's more than 1/10 of the plate, 1 point will be deducted. Be careful when you take the rice, don't fight over it. 2 points will be deducted if you spill it. A soldier in charge of the cafeteria explained the rules of eating to the students after they'd gotten into position. The students who'd planned on taking more food immediately gave up when they heard that they'd lose points for leftovers. The points of military training were counted into their credits, And if they didn't have enough credits, they'd have to take other electives in order to graduate. There were a lot of people in the cafeteria, but the soldiers were very orderly. It didn't take long for people to get their plates one by one, and it wasn't long before it was Lin Yi's turn. Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan stood at the back of the line, the last to get food. The soldier had been serving the boys, and when it came to Wang Xinyan, he didn't see it clearly, so he gave her the boys' portion as well. Xinyan was about to ask him to take some back, but she realized that it wouldn't be appropriate to take it back now that she'd already scooped it up. There were students from other classes waiting behind them, too, and so she braced herself and left with him. You don't want the main course? Lin Yi asked curiously, seeing that Xinyan only had a bowl of egg soup. There's a lot of food already. If I add the main course, I'm afraid that there'll be leftovers. Xinyan frowned as she looked at the food on the plate. Oh, it's fine. Lin Yi picked up 2 rolls and put them on Xinyan's plate. These rolls aren't bad. Eat some or you'll be hungry tonight. Ah! Xinyan was speechless. 1 roll was already a lot for her, and Lin Yi was giving her 2? I'll eat the rest. Lin Yi was a big eater, and both Mengyao and Yushu knew that firsthand. But Lin Yi could eat as much as he wanted, and it didn't matter if he didn't eat at all. That was the benefit of being a practitioner. Xinyan blushed. Lin Yi eating her leftovers? Wouldn't that be an indirect kiss? But Lin Yi's expression was normal, and his eyes were clear. Xinyan knew that she was thinking too much. She nodded and found a table with Lin Yi. The two had just sat down when a commotion came from behind them. Lin Yi frowned. He heard a familiar voice in the commotion. It was Bai Weitua's voice. Lin Yi was too lazy to care about other people's business, but Lin Yi couldn't ignore this wretched brat who kept calling him Big Brother Lin. Lin Yi was such a person. Once he decided on a friend, he would take care of it till the end. It didn't matter if it was complicated or simple, whether it was meaningful or not, whether it was a waste of time or not. Xi and Yen, wait for me here. Bai Weitua is arguing with someone. Lin Yi's expression was a little cold. Oh, be careful, Xinyan said, realizing that she was overthinking things. With Lin Yi's strength, there was no way these students would be able to do anything to him. But do I care about him? Wang Xinyan rarely cared about other people, especially a guy, but at this moment she did. It was from the bottom of her heart. Chapter 1911. 72815 or *= Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Lin Yi nodded and turned to walk towards the scene of the incident. There were already many people there, but Lin Yi was like a fish in water, quickly splitting the crowd and arriving at the center. Fan Ganha, are you doing this on purpose? You knocked my steamed bun to the ground. Do you want me to deduct points? Bai Weitua was so angry that his face turned red. This Fan Ganha was really too much of a bully. After bumping into him, not only did he not apologize, he even had a gloating look on his face. I hit you. How am I supposed to hit you if you don't hit me? You can't even see where you're going, yet you're criticizing others? Fan Ganha sneered. Let me tell you, Bai Weitua, if we hadn't drunk together before, I would have sent you flying to the Pacific Ocean with my fist. You. Bai Weitua's chest heaved up and down. This Fan Ganha was a gifted student. If they were to really fight, the one at a disadvantage would definitely be him. Bai Weitua. However, the steamed bun fell to the ground. Bai Weitua was unwilling to lose 2 points for no reason. You can pick it up. If you pick it up and eat it, you won't have to deduct points. Zhang Duopan's voice sounded from the side. It seemed like he was speaking up for Bai Weitua. But wasn't it also insulting him? Oh, that's right. You can pick it up and eat it. Then you won't have to deduct any points. Fan Ganha kicked the 2 steamed buns on the ground. The 2 steamed buns rolled on the ground at Bai Weitua's feet. The already dirty steamed buns became even dirtier. You! Bai Weitua wanted to smash the plate in his hand on Fan Ganha's face, but he knew that he couldn't do that. If he did, it wouldn't be as simple as a deduction of 2 points. It would be a violation of the rules, and he would definitely be sent back to school by the instructor. He might even lose his military training credits. What happened to us? Everyone knows that every grain of food on the plate is hard work. Don't waste it. We have to be diligent and thrifty. Fan Ganha looked at Bai Weitua mockingly. Last time at the KTV, Bai Weitua and Lin Yi made Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha lose face. Naturally, the two of them were unwilling to give up, and wanted to find an opportunity to take revenge on Bai Weitua. After hearing about the food discipline, they knew that the opportunity had come. Bai Weitua took a deep breath. He was prepared to pick up the 2 steamed buns on the ground first. If he left them on the plate and didn't eat them, he would lose 1 point at most. If he threw them on the ground, he would lose 2 points. This was a matter of academic credits, so he was prepared to bear with it. However, just as Bai Weitua was about to bend down to pick up the 2 steamed buns on the ground, a hand beat him to it. The owner of this hand was Lin Yi. Lin Yi grabbed the 2 steamed buns from the ground and rubbed them against the soles of his shoes, under the astonished gazes of the crowd, before standing up. Issue. Zhang Duopan was baffled, Fan Ganha was baffled, and even Bai Weitua was baffled. They didn't know what Lin Yi meant by this. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha. He smiled slightly, then suddenly reached out and pinched Zhang Duopan's cheeks, and directly stood on top of it. Yef equals Shuhai Pavilion. Net the dirty steamed buns covered in dust, and the mud from the soles of Lin Yi's shoes were stuffed into Zhang Duopan's mouth. Ugh! Ah! Zhang Duopan didn't expect Lin Yi to actually stuff the steamed bun into his mouth. He struggled with all his might to close his mouth, but Lin Yi's strength on his cheeks was too great. Zhang Duopan could only watch as Lin Yi stuffed the dirty steamed bun into his mouth. Who knows that every grain on a plate is hard work? Since you're so afraid of wasting food, then you can eat it. Lin Yi said expressionlessly. He didn't forget to pinch Zhang Duopan's throat and let the steamed bun enter his esophagus. Cough. Ugh. Zhang Duopan pinched his throat and coughed violently. The steamed bun was so stuck that he couldn't breathe, and his face turned purple. Your mother, you don't want to live anymore, do you? Fan Ganha was stunned by Lin Yi's actions. When Zhang Duopan coughed, he finally reacted. He pointed at Lin Yi and said angrily, "You're courting death." However, before he could finish, Lin Yi casually waved his hand and stuffed another dirty steamed bun into Fan Ganha's mouth. His words also became ugh. Bai Weitua and the surrounding students stared blankly at Lin Yi. They didn't expect Lin Yi to be so ruthless. Only Yupanhu laughed coldly. It seemed that Lin Yi didn't dare to go too far. With Lin Yi's personality, he would have just killed anyone who messed with him. Why would he go through the trouble of teaching someone a lesson? In reality, Lin Yi wouldn't just randomly kill people in the school. It was Yupanhu who misunderstood. What's going on? What happened? A voice sounded. It was the head instructor Chen Yutian. Naturally, someone went to inform head instructor Chen Yutian about the conflict. Cough cough. Wah. Zhang Duopan coughed again, and finally spat out the dirty steamed bun. He almost choked to death. Fan Ganha, on the other hand, dug out the steamed bun with his fingers for a long time before throwing it away. He was panting heavily. Bai Weitua's face paled when he saw how big the situation was. He didn't expect things to escalate to this extent. Although he was grateful for Lin Yi's help, he was also worried that he'd implicated Lin Yi. He was only supposed to get his points deducted, but now Lin Yi was in trouble. Instructor Chen, these two people were too greedy. They choked and vomited. Lin Yi pointed at Fan Ganha and Zhang Duopan. Looks like they're wasting food. Shouldn't we deduct their points? Everyone at the scene was flabbergasted. Lin Yi was lying through his teeth. Wasting food. Deduct 2 points from these two. Chen Yutian glanced at Fan Ganha and Zhang Duopan and said faintly. Wah. Zhang Duopan panicked. He didn't expect to get his points deducted. Head instructor, it's him. He forced the steamed bun into my mouth. Oh, why did he force it into your mouth? Chen Yutian asked. Zhang Duopan didn't know what to say. He was the one who made Fan Ganha do that, so he couldn't explain himself. But since Chen Yutian asked, he could only force himself to say. Because these 2 steamed buns fell on the ground. It was him, Bai Weitua, who dropped them. We came to persuade him not to waste food. But this Lenny picked them up and stuffed them into our mouths. Tisk. Zhang Duopan's words attracted a wave of disgust from the students. They'd seen everything with their own eyes, after all. And if they were to say that Lenny was lying through his teeth, then these two were twisting the facts to make a deer out of a horse. Oh, how did you persuade him? Chen Yutian continued. Target equals _ blank. Chapter 1912. 72815 equals. Chapter 1924. Late autumn night. Chen Yutian knew that Lenny wasn't someone who liked to cause trouble. He wouldn't provoke others unless they provoked him. So Chen Yutian knew that this wasn't Lin Yi's fault. Zhang Duopan didn't expect Chen Yutian to ask so many questions. They kicked the steamed buns twice, and let Bai Weidua pick them up and eat them. Song Xiaodao said from the side. Is that so? Chen Yutian turned to Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha. The two of them knew that with so many classmates watching, it was absolutely impossible for them to lie at this moment. They could only stammer and not dare to admit it. Wasting food and causing trouble, both of you. I'll deduct 4 points each. Chen Yutian turned and left after finishing his sentence. Fan Ganha and Zhang Duopan regretted it for a while. If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have explained it. Now that they had explained it, 2 more points were deducted. What was this? Bai Weidua found it strange that Chen Yutian seemed to be siding with him. But he was the victim, so he didn't think too much about it. He laughed happily. Justice is in everyone's heart. Some people just shot themselves in the foot. Humph. Let's see who's better at the freshman's party. Zhang Duopan pulled Fan Ganha along. The two of them left some harsh words and quickly left. They couldn't afford to lose face like this. After Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha left, Bai Weidua patted Lin Yi's shoulder and said excitedly, Big brother Lin, you're so cool. Let's go eat. Lin Yi said with a smile. Xingyan, on the other hand, couldn't help but cover her mouth and smile at the scene. This Lin Yi really was a violent maniac, wasn't he? At another table not far away, Himeiwa looked at Zhang Duopan with some disappointment. In the past, she felt that Zhang Duopan was a good person. Although she didn't have a good impression of him, she didn't have any bad impression of him either. However, what Zhang Duopan did today was simply disgusting. Although Bai Weitua's previous performance was somewhat cowardly, Himeiwa did not feel that he was cowardly. Fan Ganha was a gifted student. Ordinary students were not his match. Bai Weitua was simply asking for a beating. As for Lin Yi, Himeiwa shook her head. You really couldn't judge a book by its cover. Who would have thought that a gentleman would be so violent? Of course, Himeiwa didn't care about Lin Yi at all. He didn't admit to his relationship with Xingyan, but she could tell from the way he sat next to her that their relationship wasn't normal. Although this small episode was intense, it subsided quickly. Everyone was hungry. Moreover, this was the army, and there were very strict rules, so everyone found a place to eat. However, what happened just now made them relish in talking about it. After the meal, the students all returned to their own barracks. It was 6 o'clock sharp, and they were all in front of their barracks. After the medicine class, Chen Yutian appeared in front of everyone very quickly. Reporting instructor. I am the class monitor, Bai Weitua. Please instruct me. Bai Weitua stepped out. Very good, Bai Weitua is back. Chen Yutian nodded, satisfied. Tomorrow will be the start of your official military training. The 1st to 3rd days will be marching and formation training. The 4th to 6th days will be military boxing training. And the 7th to 8th days will be field training. After the 8th day, there will be formation, military boxing and kickboxing. The winning class and individual will be rewarded with 5 to 10 credits. No one expected that other than the normal credits, there would be bonus credits as well. It was quite a lot too, from 5 to 10. Don't be too happy yet. Only the top 3 of each competition will be rewarded, whether it's a group or individual. Chen Yutian said faintly, the field training is based on faculties, but the first 3 groups to return from each class will be rewarded with 2 credits each. College credits were both difficult and easy to obtain. Many elective courses such as etiquette, social interaction, and so on were easy to obtain. However, sometimes, one would still lack some credits before graduation. It would be difficult to take those courses that one had not taken before, especially for students who chose double majors. Credits were even more important. So if they could get more credits at this time, no one would complain about it. After Chun Yutian finished his lecture, he led the students to do a few simple movements in front of the barracks. For example, at ease, attention, turn left, turn right, and so on. These were all things they learned in middle school, so it wasn't hard at all. It was just a warm-up. Then, Chun Yutian led the students to jog a few rounds around the barracks before dismissing them. The first day's training wasn't much, but it was still too much for the students to handle. They collapsed on their beds after returning to the barracks. Right Pan, who yellow hair and purple hair were on the other side of the bed. These three were the oddballs, and it was obvious that they weren't easy to get along with. The students in the class didn't provoke them, and they didn't want to talk to anyone either. On the other side of the bed, Yef equals Booksy Pavilion. On the other side were Lin Yi and Xinyan. Xinyan was lying quietly beside Lin Yi. She was wearing clothes, but she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Rest early, we have to wake up at 6 tomorrow morning, Lin Yi said after looking at the time. Yeah. Xinyan snuck a peek at the calm Lin Yi, feeling a little nervous. This was the first time she'd shared a bed with a boy. She was wearing clothes, and it was military training too, but Xinyan couldn't help but feel a little nervous. It was fine when the lights were on, but now that the power was off, she was a little nervous. What are you thinking about, eyes wide open? Lin Yi asked with a smile. Xinyan still hadn't rested after a while. Ah, you can see me? Xinyan was a little surprised. There was no light in the barracks at night, and it was pitch black outside the window. Only the faint moonlight shone in from a window not far away, but it was very weak. She couldn't see what was going on in the barracks. Your eyes are so bright, I can see you. Lin Yi couldn't help but tease. Xinyan pursed her lips, not knowing what to say. After a while she harumphed. Nonsense, I'm not a wolf. Ah, go to sleep, Lin Yi said before closing his eyes. Xinyan waited for a while, and seeing that Lin Yi wasn't talking anymore, she fell asleep as well. Late autumn nights were very cold. Everyone was wearing thick camouflage clothing, but there were no blankets. It was still a little chilly. Target equals _blank. Chapter 1913. Date: October 11th. Xinyan was only wearing a tank top under her camouflage fatigue. It was only natural for her to feel cold, and so she subconsciously searched for warmth, burrowing into Lin Yi's arms. It was very warm here. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the sleeping Wang Xinyan in his arms out of nowhere. Lin Yi hadn't slept at all. He'd closed his eyes to train in the jade space. Ever since he'd learned the secrets of the jade space, Lin Yi hadn't slept at all. His perception of the outside world was still very strong, and so when Xinyan ran into his arms, Lin Yi sensed it immediately. Lin Yi shook his head and came out of the jade space. He wanted to push Xinyan away, but he didn't want to let her go. Hugging Xinyan gave him a peace of mind, and Lin Yi couldn't help but fall into a trance as he took in the faint scent of Xinyan's body. The scent made Lin Yi very comfortable, and so Lin Yi couldn't help but sniff a few more times. All of a sudden, he felt a heat in his abdomen, and Lin Yi jumped in fright. Did he have some sort of feelings for Xinyan? If that were the case, it'd be very awkward if Xinyan found out. At that thought, Lin Yi hurriedly channeled the second stage of the art of dragon mastery, trying to dispel the fire in his body. But as soon as Lin Yi's qi touched the fire in his abdomen, Lin Yi was confused. This wasn't that kind of fire. Lin Yi could tell if it was because of him. But if that wasn't the case, then could this heat be because of Xinyan's fragrance? But no matter what the reason was, Lin Yi didn't dare to delay, and had already started to use his pure qi to dissolve that ball of fire. But in the next moment, Lin Yi was surprised to find that after the ball of fire was dissolved, it seemed to have become pure qi that filled his body, and his strength was also continuously increasing. After the ball of fire was dissolved, Lin Yi's strength actually had an obvious increase. Although he still hadn't reached the barrier of Earth-class early phase peak in Chapter 1925, he was getting closer and closer to that barrier. Lin Yi was very puzzled. Why was his strength increasing? Moreover, this speed was clearly faster than just channeling the second stage of the art of dragon mastery. It wasn't by much, but it was fast. Lin Yi could feel it. Perhaps it really was because of the fragrance on Xinyan's body? Lin Yi frowned, secretly surprised. But since he found such a good opportunity, he didn't want to waste it. It wasn't easy to get a chance to share a bed with Xinyan. Of course he'd want to absorb more of this fragrance to train. Otherwise, Xinyan might not agree to it when he got back to school. Lin Yi didn't sleep that night, and his body kept channeling the art of dragon mastery until dawn. Xinyan was a bit cold in the middle of the night, and naturally went to find warmth. She opened her eyes in the morning to find herself in Lin Yi's arms. She was a bit surprised, but then she saw that Lin Yi wasn't hugging her, but she was hugging Lin Yi. Xinyan was relieved but also embarrassed. Lin Yi didn't do anything to her, but she threw herself into his arms. How shameless! If Lin Yi saw this, what would Lin Yi think? With that thought, Xinyan tried to get out of Lin Yi's arms. She sneaked a glance at Lin Yi, and realized that Lin Yi's eyes were closed. She quickly moved her body inwards, but Lin Yi felt it. Lin Yi hadn't slept at all. He'd been training the whole time, and so he spoke subconsciously. Xinyan, you're awake? Ah. Xinyan didn't expect Lin Yi to wake up earlier than her. Was Lin Yi pretending to be asleep with his eyes closed? This guy was trying to take advantage of her when he was awake. No. Xinyan suddenly remembered that if Lin Yi wanted to take advantage of her, he could have just hugged her. Why did he have to do this? Xinyan understood after a bit of thought. Lin Yi probably didn't want to disturb her, seeing that she was sleeping soundly. Even so, Xinyan still felt embarrassed. I was a bit cold last night. Ah, it's fine. I don't mind being a heater. Lin Yi really didn't mind. Lin Yi had a good impression of Xinyan in the first place, and now that Xinyan's scent was good for his training, Lin Yi didn't mind at all. In fact, he liked it. I'm up. Xinyan quickly got out of bed, seeing that the conversation was getting more and more intimate. In fact, there were a lot of students who woke up at this time, but it was still early. There was still some time before 6, so they wanted to rest a bit more. Xinyan went to the washroom to wash her face, and Lin Yi got up as well. Bai Weitua saw that someone was up, and he, as the class monitor, couldn't stay in bed. But since Lin Yi and Xinyan were the first to wake up, Bai Weitua didn't find it embarrassing at all. Woo woo woo. A loud wake-up call sounded. It was 5:50, and they were ready. All the students in the barracks ran out and lined up in front of the barracks. Chen Yutian showed up at 6 sharp, and the day's training began. The training for the first 3 days was simple. It was what they had practiced in middle and high school, marching, changing lines, and so on. Although it was tiring, they could still persist. No more unpleasantness happened in the cafeteria. With Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha as an example, no one dared to cause any more trouble. As for how Chen Yutian handled the two, other than Zhang Duopan and Fan Ganha, who were a little dissatisfied, the others didn't think that Chen Yutian was unfair. Although Lin Yi was a little harsh, he was still standing up for his classmate. In everyone's eyes, it was an act of brotherhood. Since they weren't punished, it meant that Chen Yutian was an open-minded instructor. In fact, if it weren't for Lin Yi, Chen Yutian would have punished them as well. But since it was related to Lin Yi, he was biased. What made Lin Yi disappointed was that he didn't see Meng Yao and Yushu in the cafeteria. Book C Pavilion. This wasn't the only cafeteria. Perhaps the students from the economics faculty were sent to other cafeterias, and they didn't meet. This kind of intense training was nothing to Lin Yi. What made Lin Yi the happiest was sleeping with Wang Xinyan every night. It wasn't that Lin Yi was lustful, but the fragrance on Wang Xinyan's body could speed up Lin Yi's training. 3 days. 3 days of training was equivalent to half a month of training for Lin Yi. Chapter 1914. Although Lin Yi's mastery of the second stage of the art of dragon mastery was partly due to this, Wang Xingyan's scent played an important role. Although Wang Xingyan would hug Lin Yi every morning, it was a little awkward, but as time went by, the awkwardness faded away. Now Wang Xingyan wasn't as shy as before because Lin Yi didn't take advantage of her, and she didn't do it on purpose. There was no need for the two of them to be awkward. Just like what Lin Yi said, the two of them were good friends. From the fourth day onwards, it was military boxing. Military boxing. Most of the students had heard of this name, but they had never practiced it. After all, there were Muay Thai, Sanda, Taekwondo, and even Tai Chi in the martial arts training classes, but there were very few that taught military boxing. They were curious about this boxing technique that everyone in the military practiced. Only Yu Coiling Tiger had a disdainful smile on his face. Military boxing, although it sounds ordinary, is a boxing technique that every soldier in the army knows. Many people think that it's only for strengthening their bodies. Chen Yutian paused for a moment before continuing. Military boxing can strengthen your body, but it's also a very practical fighting style. It's very effective when you're fighting with your enemies in close combat. Not to mention normal soldiers, even the special forces might use military boxing when fighting against enemies. So, if you practice military boxing well, it will guarantee your safety in the future. If you can use military boxing well when you meet an enemy, you won't have a problem protecting yourself, even if you can't kill the bad guys. These words made the students present look forward to it. Yes, if they could learn this fist technique well, wouldn't they not be taken advantage of by the bad guys when they encounter danger in the future? Even Lin Yi nodded in agreement. Military boxing was a set of martial arts that had been tempered by countless elite soldiers. Chen Yutian wasn't exaggerating at all. At this moment, someone laughed untimely, as if he was very disdainful of Chen Yutian's words. Who laughed just now? Is there anything wrong? Chen Yutian's face darkened. He didn't expect such a student to exist. Sir, I've seen him before. There's someone in our class who's very strong as well. Your military boxing might not be his match. The one who spoke was the blonde, Tiger Right's follower, the one Lin Yi had taught a lesson to. Previously, when Pan Huyu saw Lin Yi's actions in the cafeteria, he guessed that Lin Yi did not dare to cause trouble on campus, so he began to carry out his plan. He had Huang Mao create some trouble for Lin Yi to disgust Lin Yi. It would be best if Lin Yi could deduct some credits, so that he could suffer in silence. This was the highest level of pranking people. Oh, who are you talking about? Chen Yutian frowned as he looked at the blonde's hair color. A trace of disgust flashed through his eyes. This guy was probably a gangster, doing whatever he wanted in school just because his family was rich. However, this was the military, not a school. Naturally, Chen Yutian wouldn't let him do whatever he wanted. It's Lin Yi, he's a martial arts master. Huang Mao pointed at Lin Yi's direction. Oh, how do you know he's a martial arts master? Are you one too? Chen Yutian asked. Huang Mao didn't expect Chen Yutian to point his spear at him. He was caught off guard. Right Coiling Tiger furrowed his brows. He had been feeling proud of his plan. After all, now that he'd said that, it would be difficult for Lin Yi to decide whether to accept the challenge or not. From Tiger Right's point of view, it would be easy for Lin Yi to defeat this instructor with his strength. But if he defeated the instructor, wouldn't he lose face? Would Lin Yi be able to do well in the military training in the future? Even if the instructor didn't hold a grudge against Lin Yi would still be reprimanded by the school when he returned. But if Lin Yi admitted defeat on purpose, with his strength that could even defeat an Earth-class master, wouldn't it be a very frustrating thing to admit defeat to a normal instructor? If he didn't accept the challenge, Lin Yi would be disobeying orders. Disobeying orders in military training would also result in points deduction. However, Tiger Right didn't expect that the conflict would be shifted back to the blonde. I'm asking you a question. How do you know that Lin Yi is a master? Chen Yutian yelled at the blonde. The blonde didn't know how to explain. Since you know that he's a master, then I see that you're a master as well. Come, Fight me and show us military boxing. Chen Yutian knew that the blonde didn't have any good intentions. He wanted to teach him a lesson so that he wouldn't stop. Even if the blonde wasn't against Lin Yi, Chen Yutian didn't have a good impression of him with his gangster outfit. Me. Even if he could not graduate, it did not matter. He was just a guest in the Yu family. His education was of no use to him. Hence the yellow hair chuckled. I can go, but instructor, let's make this clear first. What if I win your military boxing? The yellow hair man was slightly stunned, but he was not afraid. He was here to accompany his young master to study. Yu Coiling Tiger cared about credits, but the yellow hair did not care. Even if he could not graduate, it did not matter. Win. What do you say? Chen Yutian didn't expect the blonde to dare to raise a condition. He focused his eyes and wanted to see where the blonde got his confidence from. Unfortunately, Chen Yutian didn't have the foresight that Lin Yi had. Internal martial arts experts would only reveal their true strength when they were circulating their innate qi. If they did not deliberately reveal their true strength, then they would only reveal their true strength in battle, or when they were using Qigong movement techniques. Physical masters didn't have true energy in their body. They could only use their strong physique to activate the true energy in nature. Therefore, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to see their true strength if they didn't make a move. If I win, the three of us won't participate in the military training anymore. But you have to give us full marks for the military training, and you have to give us bonus points as well. The blonde pointed at him, tiger right and purple hair. Fine. Although it's against the rules, I'll still agree to it. Since you can't beat me, I'll show you what military boxing is. Chen Yutian laughed coldly. Remember what you said. The blonde laughed and started to activate his incantation. In an instant, the strength of the early phase of the mystic class was revealed. Chen Yutian's eyes flashed with surprise. He didn't expect a gangster to be a master of the early phase of the mystic class. Target equals _blank. Chapter 1915. Of course, Chen Yutian didn't put him in his eyes. He was a master at the peak of the late phase of the mystic class, and his strength had been stabilized. Why would he be afraid of the yellow hair? Attack me, you can use all kinds of moves. I'll only use military boxing. Chen Yutian pretended not to see the yellow hair's strength, and said indifferently. The yellow hair sneered in his heart. Pretending? It seems like you don't even know what a cultivator is. And you want to beat me with military boxing? Even if you practice military boxing to the extreme, you're still a normal person. The difference between you and a cultivator is like heaven and earth. Remember what you said. The yellow hair didn't say much and swung his fist. Of course, he was afraid that he would kill Chen Yutian with one punch. So he only used the strength of the early phase of the golden class to teach Chen Yutian a lesson. Bang! The blonde's fist landed on Chen Yutian's arm, and Chen Yutian's move was a defensive move in the military boxing. The yellow hair thought that even if he couldn't break Chen Yutian's arm, he would at least send him flying. However, Chen Yutian didn't move an inch, and the yellow hair retreated a few steps under Chen Yutian's defense, falling on his butt. Ha ha ha! Seeing the yellow-haired guy sitting on the ground, all the students present burst into laughter. This guy was so arrogant at the beginning. He even wanted the instructor to exempt them from military training. Not only that, he even wanted extra points. Who did he think he was? Chen Yutian didn't want to hurt the yellow hair, so he controlled his strength to the peak of the early phase of the mystic class, suppressing the yellow hair. One had to know that the difference between an earth class and an earth class was one level, and they could kill their opponent. So Chen Yutian only used military boxing to defend, and didn't attack the yellow hair, wanting him to back off. But the yellow hair was too careless. If he used his full strength, he wouldn't fall on his butt like this. Even if he couldn't do anything to Chen Yutian. Peak of the early phase of the mystic class. The yellow hair looked at Chen Yutian in disbelief. Since when were there so many cultivators? One had to know that he was from a hidden house. And that was why he had the strength of a mystic class. Chen Yutian was just a military instructor. And yet he was stronger than him? Right, Coiling Tiger and Purple Hair were practitioners as well. They couldn't see through Chen Yutian's strength before. And they'd be idiots if they still couldn't. Right, Coiling Tiger's face changed. Yellow Hair, come back. Purple Hair, you go. Yes, the purple-haired man nodded. He was a mid-phase mystic class master, a head above Chen Yutian. So he agreed without hesitation. I didn't expect Instructor Chen to be a master. Since that's the case, I'll take 2 of your attacks for my brother. Purple Hair stood up and said to Chen Yutian indifferently. Oh, since you're here then come. Look carefully. If you meet these little hoodlums in the future, be like me, and you won't be bullied by them. Chen Yutian used these 2 as examples to explain to the students. The purple-haired man was pissed. He was a mid-phase mystic class master, not a hoodlum. But this wasn't the time to talk, and Chen Yutian didn't point out his name. The purple-haired man could only hold it in for now. He'd defeat Chen Yutian later, and that would be the best way to retaliate. Ha ha ha, yes, Instructor Chen. We're watching carefully. The students said. Peak of the early phase mystic class, is that strong? The purple-haired man sneered at Chen Yutian. He activated his internal arts, revealing his strength as a mid-phase mystic class master. Come, continue to attack me. Chen Yutian glanced at the purple-haired man, and he was even more shocked. There was a mid-phase mystic class. What kind of class was this? There were hidden dragons and crouching tigers. But compared to an Earth-class master like Lin Yi, these people were too weak. Huh? The purple-haired man froze. This Chen Yutian was only at the peak of the early phase mystic class. But he wasn't afraid of him, a mid-phase mystic class master, and even asked him to attack him. Was he an idiot? A high-level master attacking an Earth-class master. Wasn't that a one-sided attack? Hurry up, don't waste everyone's time. Chen Yutian looked at the purple-haired man impatiently. The purple-haired man was pissed. He snorted coldly and kicked towards Chen Yutian. Since Chen Yutian was a master at the peak of the early phase mystic class, the purple-haired man didn't need to hold back anymore. He would use his full strength and injure Chen Yutian. He was at the peak of the early phase mystic class anyways, and he wouldn't die. The purple-haired man wanted Chen Yutian to suffer in silence. He was the one who asked him to attack. Even if he injured Chen Yutian, he could only pinch his nose and accept it. He was the one who agreed to the conditions of winning. However, when the purple-haired man kicked, Chen Yutian also used a military boxing to win. But what shocked the purple-haired man was that Chen Yutian wasn't a master at the peak of the early phase mystic class. He was clearly at the peak of the late phase mystic class. The purple-haired man regretted it, but it was too late. The moment his foot touched Chen Yutian's fist, he flew backwards. The distance he flew was much further than the yellow-haired man. He flew to the edge of the training ground and landed heavily on the ground, screaming in pain. Ouch! This was the result of Chen Yutian holding back. Otherwise, with Chen Yutian's strength, killing the purple-haired man was as easy as playing with a toy. Wah! The students at the scene immediately gasped in surprise, followed by thunderous applause. Chen Yutian's move was too cool. It looked like an ordinary move, but it had such power. It was like a stunt scene in a martial arts movie. A normal person's punch could only knock someone down, but this kind of punch could send someone flying so far away. Ordinary people couldn't even see it. It was something that could only be seen in movies. Chen Yutian's punch could only be seen in movies. But now, it happened in front of everyone's eyes. It turned out that those scenes in the movie were not a lie to attract attention. But in fact, there really was such a powerful person who could do it. Yellow hair, purple hair, right coiling tiger, you violated the rules. Run 100 laps around the barracks, or you can't have lunch. Chen Yutian glanced at right coiling tiger. He knew that these 3 were in cahoots. Since the yellow-haired man and the purple-haired man weren't ordinary people, this right coiling tiger was probably a practitioner as well. Running 100 laps wasn't a big deal. Yes, the yellow-haired man, the purple-haired man, and right coiling tiger were furious, but they didn't dare to act rashly. This instructor was actually a master at the peak of the late phase mystic class. In front of such a master, they couldn't fight back. Seeing the 3 running laps, the students at the scene burst into laughter. Target equals _ blank. Chapter 1916. Field Training. Alright, everyone has seen the power of military boxing. Now, are you guys willing to learn from me? Chen Yutian asked. Yes. After witnessing Chen Yutian's power with their own eyes, who wouldn't be willing to learn? In fact, military boxing was indeed powerful, but it depended on the person using it. If Chen Yutian wasn't a mystic class master, he wouldn't be able to send someone flying with just one punch. However, Chen Yutian was more than happy to use this method to motivate the students. Seeing was believing. His fight with the blonde and purple hair was more convincing than any explanation. He believed that the medical major would be one of the classes that studied military boxing the most seriously. Under Chen Yutian's guidance, everyone practiced enthusiastically. Even Wang Xinyan was sweating from exhaustion, but she was still very serious. Fuck, Master Yu. Why are we so unlucky? The blonde said helplessly as he ran. This is weird. Any instructor is a mystic class master. Mystic class masters are so worthless. Yu Coiling Tiger frowned. But a wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Let's run. We'll teach that Linny a lesson when we get back. I thought that boss Bai wouldn't be around during the military training, and I wanted to discuss Linny a little. What a lucky bastard. The purple hair said. However, as soon as the purple hair finished speaking, Chen Yutian scolded. What are you 3 mumbling about? You seem to be very energetic? Add another 100 laps. Chen Yutian glanced at Yu Coiling Tiger. Although this guy was only a golden class master, running a few 100 laps wouldn't tire him out. So he added another 100 laps for them. Yu Coiling Tiger and the others groaned in their hearts. But there was nothing they could do. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. The next program was field training. This was one of the most important programs in the military training, and it was also the toughest training. This was a test of everyone's ability to survive in the wild. Early in the morning, a few buses brought all the biology students to the foot of a mountain about 50 kilometers away from the army camp. This was a nameless mountain range, not far from the border. The training this time was for 3 people to form a group and go up the mountain to find a small flag at a designated location. Because each flag was placed in a different position, each flag had a GPS positioning device, and each team would be randomly given a GPS receiver. Only by following the coordinates on the receiver could they find the flag, and the first 3 teams to find the flag would each receive 2 extra points as a reward. The training would last for 2 days, starting from this morning and ending tomorrow night. The teams that did not find the flag would only have 1 military training credit deducted. Although this training looked very simple, with the GPS coordinates indicating, how difficult would it be to actually find it? This mountain was not a tourist attraction. There were no ready-made paths at all. Although the mountain walls were not steep, the forest was still covered with jungles. It was obviously not an easy task to pass through the layers of jungles to find the target. Moreover, the location of each flag was different. There was no chance of working together in such a big mountain. They could only rely on the 2 people in the same team to find the flag. Chen Yutian taught the students some essential knowledge of survival in the wild. Although there weren't any beasts on the mountain, most of the students grew up in the city. They didn't have any survival experience in the wild. It would be bad if something happened. However, just in case, Chen Yutian still had a backup plan. There's a red switch behind this GPS coordinate device. This is an emergency warning switch. If you guys really meet with danger on the mountain, just flip this switch, and we will know your coordinates. The rescue team will rush to the scene immediately. Chen Yutian said. Of course, If you don't meet with danger and just randomly flip the switch, I will also cancel your points for this field training. I hope everyone can cooperate with each other. And the three of you must learn to support each other. I don't want any of you to fall behind. If any of you fall behind, no matter if you find the flag or not, your points will be deducted directly. Everyone was worried when they heard that they had to go up the mountain alone to find the flag. But with this emergency switch, there was no problem. As for falling behind, no one thought about it. No one could leave their classmate behind. Alright, next, students from all classes form groups of 3. Come here to collect the GPS, compressed biscuits, drinking water, medical kit and camping supplies, Chen Yutian said. The number of people in Lin Yi's class wasn't a multiple of 3. There were 2 extra people. So Lin Yi didn't hesitate and formed a group with Xinyan. Normally, they would find an extra student from another class to form a group. But Chen Yutian knew how strong Lin Yi was. Lin Yi could carry Xinyan up the mountain without a problem, so he agreed without hesitation. After all the groups had collected their things, everyone prepared to go up the mountain under Chen Yutian's orders. However, not long after they went up the mountain, they didn't have anyone in the same direction. Their flags weren't in the same position, and they were scattered all over the place. The mountain was big and tall, and very few people were willing to take detours with others. Most of them chose the straight distance on the GPS. However, on a mountain like this, even if it was a straight distance, it was impossible to walk in a straight line. After all, there were some rocks and trees that had to be detoured. Xingyan was a little embarrassed as she looked at Lin Yi carrying all the luggage. Lin Yi, can you share some of this with me? Most groups had 3 guys, and there wasn't much to share even if there was more. But Lin Yi's group was small to begin with, and Xingyan was a girl, so the heavy burden fell on Lin Yi's shoulders. It's fine, these aren't heavy at all. Just maintain your stamina. If you collapse from exhaustion, I'll have to carry you as well. Won't that be more tiring? Lin Yi smiled. Oh, Xingyan blushed a little. She didn't know why, but she was looking forward to it. She didn't know when it started. But Xingyan was getting used to the feeling of Lin Yi beside her. It had only been a few days, but she felt like she was relying on him. Xingyan didn't know if this feeling was good or bad, but she didn't reject it. It was the first time in her life that she was this close to a boy. She was surprised that she didn't hate Lin Yi at all. Chapter 1917. No other meaning. Xingyan was a quiet person, and she'd never fallen for a man before. She even had a natural repulsion towards men, and the reason for that was her 2 uncles being too evil. They'd never liked her since she was a child, and that had given her a bad impression of other men. But she'd never felt that way since she'd met Lin Yi. Perhaps it was because of the chance encounter on the train, and she'd felt pity for him when she saw him getting tricked. She'd been surprised to find out that it wasn't Lin Yi who'd been tricked, but the scammers. She'd been curious about what Lin Yi was like. The second time they'd met was in the business district of Songshan. She'd gotten into some trouble, and Lin Yi had taken care of it easily. From that moment on, Xingyan felt that Lin Yi was a good friend. But the time they truly opened their hearts to each other was that time on the plane, when she'd been feeling down. She'd told him a lot about her life and worries, and from then on, they'd become closer than just normal friends. They could be considered good friends now. Step by step, Xingyan realized that Lin Yi was a good person, and a good one at that. But thinking about it, Lin Yi might be a good person in her eyes, but in the eyes of the Xiao family, Lin Yi was a super bully. The 2 climbed for about a kilometer, and Xingyan was starting to run out of stamina. It had been easier at the start, but now it was getting more and more difficult. There were branches, leaves, and mud everywhere, and it slowed them down quite a bit. Of course, if it weren't for Xingyan, Lin Yi would have been able to find Xiaoqi and come back with ease. This sort of jungle route was a piece of cake for Lin Yi after all. Back in the primeval forest in Africa, a place full of wild beasts, snakes, swamps, poisonous plants, and bugs, Linny was still able to run like he was flying. Let's rest if you're tired, Linny said after finding a relatively clean spot. Ah, it's okay, I can still hold on. Xingyan didn't want to rest so soon. How long would they be able to find Xiaoqi if they kept resting? It's okay. The scenery here is beautiful. Just take it as a view, Linny said with a smile. Look at the maple leaves all over the mountains. How beautiful. As far as Linny was concerned, if he couldn't find it in the end, he'd just run over and take the flag back, and that would count as completing the mission. As for the top 3, Linny didn't really care about them. Boss Bai had already guaranteed that he'd be able to graduate smoothly, so why would he need credits? Boss Bai was the boss in the Faculty of Medicine. With his promise, even the principal would not say anything. Yeah, it's really beautiful. Xingyan sat down as well after hearing Lin Yi's words. She couldn't help but think of a poem as she looked at the red leaves. Far away on the cold mountain, there is a house in the depths of the clouds. Stop to love the maple forest at night. The frost leaves are redder than flowers in February. It was just a random poem, but Xingyan's face reddened when she said it out loud. The third line of the poem, stop and sit in love with the maple forest, had been changed by some bored people to stop and sit in love with the maple forest, to describe car vibrations. Xingyan had just been on campus 2 days ago. Xingyan had read it on campus 2 days ago. I'm just saying, I don't mean anything by it, Xingyan added. Linny looked at Xingyan confused. What's wrong? What do you mean by nothing by it? Xingyan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at Lin Yi's face. Was she overthinking things? Linny hadn't thought of all this? But she couldn't just explain it to him. Linny hadn't thought of all this, and it wouldn't be good if she explained it like that. It's nothing. Nothing. Linny frowned as he thought back to what Xingyan had said. You said stop? Linny had been on campus when he was looking into the school's affairs. He'd seen someone tampering with the poem on QQ. But Xingyan was referring to this. No, I didn't. Why are your thoughts so impure? Xingyan's face reddened. Wasn't she just making him even more curious, after saying that she didn't have anything to do with it? It would have been better if she hadn't reminded him, but he remembered now. Linny shrugged helplessly. You're the one who said it first. All right, I'm done resting. Let's keep going, Xingyan said, changing the topic. With that, she stood up and started walking. Linny smiled faintly. Xingyan was quite an interesting character. She didn't look like she didn't belong to the world, but she was a little cold in front of people she wasn't familiar with. Once they got to know each other, her personality would become more cheerful. She was similar to the Miss in this regard, but not exactly the same. The Miss was cold on the outside but warm on the inside, but she wouldn't be as quiet as Xingyan. They walked for a while, and it was almost noon. Linny took out a pack of biscuits from his bag. Hungry? Do you want to eat something first? I'm not that hungry yet. Maybe we can wait a bit longer? Xingyan was afraid that it wouldn't be enough. She'd looked at other people's GPSs before, and none of them had a GPS, as far as the one she was holding. This was practically the end of the mountain, and they'd have to climb over the other side of the mountain to find the flag. Xingyan didn't know why she was so unlucky to get a GPS like this. She didn't want to waste food. Perhaps she and Lin Yi would be the last group to complete the mission. In fact, Yutian gave her this GPS on purpose. From his point of view, it was safer to give the furthest coordinate to Lin Yi. With Lin Yi's skills, it was a piece of cake for him to get the red flag. It's fine. The 2 of us got a bag of supplies too, and it's enough for 3 people. Linny smiled as he tossed a bag of biscuits to Xingyan. Then, let's eat a little. Xingyan was hungry when she saw the food. If Linny didn't take it out, she might be able to hold on for a bit longer. The 2 found a clean place and sat down. They ate some biscuits and drank some water before continuing their journey. After eating, Xingyan recovered a lot of her strength. However, the distance to the destination was too far. They walked for another 4 hours, and they were only halfway there. Lin Yi sighed when he saw that Xingyan was starting to run out of stamina. We're at least 20 kilometers away from our destination in a straight line. We need to get there before nightfall, or we won't be able to make it back in time for the training mission tomorrow. Target equals _ blank. Chapter 1918. Sigh, it's all my fault. I got a GPS that's so far away. I've seen other people's GPS. Some of them are very close, but the total distance is less than 20 kilometers. Xingyan smiled bitterly. Her one-way trip was equivalent to someone else's round trip. Lin Yi, naturally, knew that Yu Tian did it on purpose. Only he had the ability to carry someone this far. So he left the most difficult part to him. Of course, there was another GPS that was just as difficult as Lin Yi's. It was in the opposite direction of Lin Yi, at the end of the mountain range. They had to cross the mountain as well. But Yu Tian threw the GPS to Tiger, right, and the other two. It was a piece of cake for these 3 practitioners to get there. Lin Yi was an Earth class, but even with Xingyan, he might not be as fast as the 3 of them. Ha! It'll be fine with me here. If worst comes to worst, I'll carry you. Lin Yi smiled nonchalantly. I'll hold on a little longer. Xingyan hesitated and gritted her teeth. Although it would be easy for Lin Yi to carry her, Xingyan was shy and didn't want to risk it. Also, she was afraid that Lin Yi would be too tired. Lin Yi nodded, but after seeing how tired Xingyan was, he reached out his hand to her. Xingyan hesitated, but still held Lin Yi's hand. This was the first time a guy held her hand, but it wasn't because they were in love, but because they were teammates helping each other. Xingyan knew that Lin Yi wouldn't have any ulterior motives. He just wanted to help her, that's all. But although Xingyan said that in her heart, her hands were still a little stiff. Her palms were sweaty from holding Lin Yi's hand not long ago. Lin Yi smiled, feeling Xingyan's nervousness. We're teammates now. Xingyan paused for a second, but smiled and nodded. Yeah, we're comrades in arms. The knot in Wang Xingyan's heart was unraveled, and her grip on Lin Yi's hand tightened. She didn't feel nervous anymore, but a comfortable sense of security replaced it. It was as if she had nothing to fear as long as she held onto his hand, and all difficulties were nothing more than floating clouds. Lin Yi stumbled along the way for another 10 kilometers before the sky darkened. Dark came early in late autumn, and it was already 6 in the evening. Lin Yi didn't have any obstacles in his way, but Xingyan was a girl, and it was obvious that she was a little afraid. When carrying out a mission in the primeval forest, Lin Yi would usually choose to act at night. There was a saying that went, "The night is dark and the wind is strong, and the night is the night to kill." Let me carry you. Lin Yi looked at the coordinates on the GPS. The 2 of them had already passed the peak, and were now going down the mountain towards their destination. The old saying was right. It was easy to go up the mountain, but difficult to go down the mountain. It was hard to go up the mountain, but it was less dangerous. It was easy to go down the mountain, but it was easy to lose your footing. Of course, this was no problem for an Earth-class practitioner like Lin Yi. He wouldn't die even if he slid down the mountain, but it wasn't the same for Xingyan. Going down the mountain was harder than going up, especially since the sky was already dark. She didn't dare to walk too fast. That was why Lin Yi suggested carrying Xingyan on his back. Xingyan was hesitating. They were less than 10 kilometers away from their destination, but it was all the way down the mountain. If she kept walking like this, it would be late at night. If the 2 of them rested for the night, they wouldn't be able to wake up at noon the next day. They wouldn't be able to make it back in time. Come on, my comrade. Lin Yi hung his backpack in front of his chest and squatted down. Xingyan heard Lin Yi and didn't resist anymore. She wrapped her arms around Lin Yi's neck and laid on top of Lin Yi. But when the softness of her chest pressed against Lin Yi, Xingyan remembered that she wasn't wearing a bra. Didn't that mean that she was lying on Lin Yi's back? But thinking about it, A normal person's back shouldn't be very sensitive. Lenny shouldn't feel anything. She didn't know that Lenny wasn't a normal person, but a special one. He was an Earth-class practitioner, and practitioners had the most flexible control over their body parts. That was why when Xingyan laid on top of Lenny reacted fortunately. Xingyan was behind him, and the sky was dark. She couldn't see his reaction at all, otherwise Lin Yi would be embarrassed. Xingyan thought about how Lin Yi's backpack was hanging in front of him, and she wanted to help Lin Yi carry it. But then she remembered that she was still on Lin Yi's back. Even if she carried the backpack, she'd be putting the weight on Lin Yi's back. What difference would that make? Xingyan thought that Lin Yi would be walking very slowly with her on his back, but when she looked at the trees in front of her, she realized that not only did Lin Yi not slow down, he was walking even faster than before. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was walking like he was flying. What surprised Xingyan the most was that Lin Yi didn't have the feeling that she had. His steps were very steady, and he didn't miss a single step. Could it be that Lin Yi had been accommodating her all this time, and that was why he was walking so slowly? Xingyan felt even more ashamed at the thought. In fact, even if Lin Yi closed his eyes, he could still walk like he was flying, and he could see more clearly than with his eyes open. Although he felt the softness on his back, Lin Yi's attention quickly shifted to other places. What should he do with Miss and Shu? With their personalities, they might not be in a group with others. They weren't practitioners and they were girls. Would they be in danger if they went up the mountain? However, phones weren't allowed to be used here, and they were locked in a cabinet in the barracks. Even if Lin Yi wanted to contact Miss, it was impossible. He could only ask Chen Yutian to take care of Mississippi. But thinking about it, with Yushu around, Chen Yutian wouldn't give them complicated tasks. Finally, Lin Yi arrived at his destination. It had to be said that Lin Yi had been moving very fast this way. He'd covered 10 kilometers in less than half an hour, and this was under Lin Yi's deliberate control. He didn't want to scare Xingyan too much. Normally, he'd only run for 10 minutes, but Lin Yi didn't want to scare Xingyan. Xingyan was too tired, and she fell asleep on Lin Yi's shoulder. It was a comfortable and safe feeling, as if she had forgotten all her worries when she laid on Lin Yi's broad shoulder. Although it was only half an hour, Xingyan still slept soundly. Chapter 1919. Lin Yi's sudden stop woke Xingyan up. She didn't know how long she slept for, but when she opened her eyes and saw the flag not far from her, she woke up immediately. We're here? We're here already. Xingyan couldn't believe it. Lin Yi had been carrying her for so long, and they're already here? You're awake. Lin Yi knew that Xingyan was asleep, and Lin Yi was the first to notice her waking up. I'm sorry, I'm too tired and fell asleep. Xingyan said apologetically. There's nothing to be sorry about. Lin Yi smiled. That's how it should be. Rest up and we'll continue our journey tomorrow. After putting Xingyan down, Lin Yi took the flag and put it in his bag before setting up the tent. In an SUV at the foot of the mountain, Chen Yutian and a few other warriors were staring at a computer screen. When Yutian saw the GPS in Lin Yi's hand coincide with the flag's coordinates, he knew that they had arrived at their destination. Yutian let out a sigh of relief. Although Lin Yi was slower than Pan Hu and the others, Lin Yi was carrying a girl. However, in the last 10 kilometers, Lin Yi's speed was very fast. Yutian guessed that Lin Yi was carrying Xingyan. Lin Yi, why don't I help you? You should eat something too. Carrying me on your back must be tiring, right? Xingyan said as she watched Lin Yi assembling the tent. It's fine, you eat first. You've never done this before, and it'll take a lot of time to assemble it according to the blueprint, Lin Yi said as he moved the parts of the tent. Xingyan was startled. Didn't he look at the blueprint? But when she took a closer look, Lin Yi really didn't look at the blueprint. It was folded on the side, and Lin Yi didn't even open it. You've assembled it before? Xingyan was surprised. And these military tents are assembled the same way. I used to do it all the time. Lenny sighed. It was as if he had returned to those days of war, camping with his teammates every night, assembling the tents. Pangolin was the most enthusiastic when it came to assembling the tents, and sleeping was his favorite thing to do. Lin Yi's heart sank at the thought of Pangolin. He still hadn't found the culprit who killed Pangolin. Although Lin Yi had destroyed the common house Yu, they were just accomplices, not the mastermind. The mastermind should be the organization called Red Conches. Although Lin Yi had killed 2 important members of Red Conches, it was far from enough. Lin Yi's goal was to destroy the whole family. Only by destroying this organization would he be able to vent his hatred. He thought of Ing Ziyu, wondering how she was doing. According to Faubert, she and Chun-Shi both got into Songshan's first school. But Chun-Shi reached the minimum requirement to be a free student, and Ing Ziyu barely reached the minimum requirement to be a self-funded student. But with Faubert there, Ing Ziyu didn't have to pay. Pengzhan Industries wasn't in trouble yet, so Faubert still had the absolute right to speak. Even after Hausen took over, they wouldn't pursue something as small as this. They didn't have the time to. This time, Lin Yi planned to go visit Ing Ziyu and see how she was. Lin Yi cared about this girl quite a bit, and the reason was that she was Pangolin's sister. In the past, Xingyan was curious. You used to assemble these? Ah, I used to. Lin Yi smiled bitterly, but for some reason, he didn't hide anything from Xingyan. In the past, my life and yours were 2 different worlds. Perhaps it was because of Lin Yi's trust in Xingyan, or perhaps Lin Yi didn't need to hide anything with his current strength. Those enemies of his weren't enemies to Lin Yi anymore, and Lin Yi wasn't afraid of their revenge. Lin Yi was a golden class back then, so he was afraid that his old enemies would come looking for him. But now that Lin Yi was an Earth class, the enemies he faced were all at least Mystic class. There was no point in hiding it anymore. Ah, Xingyan paused. You mean before you came to Songshan? Something like that. That time when I met you on the train was the beginning of my assimilation into this city. Lin Yi nodded. Xingyan didn't ask what Lin Yi did before. Everyone had their secrets, and she didn't want to put Lin Yi in a difficult position. Let's eat something and rest. Ah, okay. Lin Yi put the last part of the tent in place. The tent was now complete. Lin Yi and Xingyan sat in front of the tent, opening a pack of compressed biscuits under the moonlight. Xingyan was hungry, but she didn't eat too much, which surprised Lin Yi. You want to eat more? Xingyan blushed. It's not convenient to go to the bathroom here. I don't want to eat too much. Ah, we're deep in the forest, just find a random place. Lin Yi smiled. It's fine, eat more. We still have a long way to go tomorrow. Lin Yi tried to persuade her, but Xingyan still didn't eat too much. She drank quite a bit of mineral water though. The 2 of them had brought a lot of water. Perhaps Xingyan was trying to help Lin Yi lighten up, and drinking water could fill up their stomachs. I'm full, let's rest. Xingyan took a deep breath. The air here is so good. Yeah, there's no noise and waste from the city. If we weren't in a rush, this would be a good place for a vacation. Lin Yi said. Yeah, let's rest. Xingyan nodded. She was about to enter the tent when she saw that Lin Yi wasn't moving. Lin Yi, aren't you coming to rest with us? You go, I'll be fine outside. Lin Yi didn't enter the tent. It's fine. Didn't we sleep together back in the barracks? Xingyan said, seeing that Lin Yi wasn't feeling comfortable. It wasn't that there were a lot of people, but now it's just the 2 of us. Lin Yi was worried that Xingyan would be embarrassed, but Xingyan was being more generous. I trust you. Xingyan lowered her head, not saying anything else. She was actually asking a guy to sleep with her. It would have been inconceivable in the past, but now it was natural. Okay. Lin Yi nodded after a bit of hesitation. Chapter 1920. Wang Xinyan's scent was beneficial to his training, so Linny didn't want to waste this opportunity. He might not get another chance like this when he got back to school. Sleeping together in the barracks with other people was considered a group activity, but now that Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan were in the same tent, the atmosphere was a little awkward. But this scene gave Lin Yi a familiar feeling. It was also in a tent, with a beautiful and gentle girl. Lin Yi seemed to have experienced something similar. Was it Ning? Lin Yi shook his head. They were in a cave, not in a tent. But in the depths of his memory, it seemed like today had happened before. Was it a past life? Or was it a dream? Or was it fate between him and Wang Xinyan? If it was the latter, then it was possible. They were fated to be together, sitting in the same seat a few times. And now they were in the same bed. How many times could there be such a coincidence in life? Are you asleep? Wang Xinyan's words interrupted Lin Yi's thoughts, bringing Lin Yi back to reality. No, why? Lin Yi asked. I'm a little scared, it's so quiet here. Wang Xinyan entered the tent and felt that the surroundings were eerily quiet. She was in the barracks with her classmates, and there were soldiers patrolling outside. It had never been this quiet. You'll get used to it. This mountain is a dead mountain, there aren't any beasts, but it's safe. Lin Yi said. Some of the mountains are not quiet, but they're even scarier at night. What Lin Yi said was the truth. The night in the tropical forest was the scariest. Not only did they have to be on guard against enemies, but they also had to be on guard against all kinds of beasts and poisonous insects. Here, however, there was no danger at all. And can you talk to me? Wang Xinyan was tired, but she didn't sleep too much. She remembered that Lin Yi wasn't asleep yet, so she said apologetically, Ah, right, you haven't slept yet. Why don't you rest first? Don't worry about me. I'm a cultivator. I'm fine even if I don't sleep. Lin Yi shook his head and smiled. Lin Yi, what do you think we should pursue in life? Xinyan had been lost for a while now, not knowing the meaning of life. Was she just going to be a sacrifice for her family? Everyone has their own pursuits, I can't say for sure. Lin Yi was a little puzzled as to why Xinyan would ask such a profound question. Then what is your pursuit? Xinyan regretted asking the question. I'm sorry, I was just asking randomly. It's fine if you don't want to tell me. Once a long time ago, I also asked myself what my pursuit and goal was. But during that period of time, I was very confused. I didn't know what I was pursuing and what my goal was. Every day, I seemed to be doing things that I didn't like, but I had to do them. Lin Yi said. At that time, I really didn't know what I was pursuing, and I didn't know if I would spend the rest of my life in such a muddle. Oh! What happened after that? Xinyan was a little surprised. Lin Yi had that kind of feeling in time. After that I came to Songshan, where I had my own love, my own friends. I wanted to protect them, to give them a better life. That was my pursuit and goal. Lin Yi said. Only by becoming stronger can I achieve all of that. I see. Then I'm a little envious of you. Xinyan smiled bitterly. I've never had many friends since I was young, and I've never fallen for a guy before. I don't know what true love is, and I don't have any close friends either. Ah, I'm not your friend? Lin Yi asked with a smile. You. Of course you are. I think I've found it. I've said a lot of things in front of you, things I've never done before. Xinyan smiled. But you don't need me to protect you. You're the one protecting me instead. Friends help each other, of course. There's no rule that says who has to protect who. Lin Yi said. Yeah, but is there really such a thing as pure friendship between a guy and a girl? Xinyan asked all of a sudden. Ah. Lin Yi blinked. He was about to say that there was, but wasn't there one between him and her? But he shook his head inwardly. Pure? He'd had thoughts when he saw Xinyan naked, and he'd had a physiological reaction when he felt the softness of her breasts. Was that pure? Lin Yi couldn't help but have a reaction when he smelled the scent on Xinyan's body. It was a good thing that the tent was dark, and even with the moonlight, they could only see each other's faces clearly. Xinyan had a weird expression on her face as she looked at Lin Yi's stunned face. She turned her body sideways, wanting to chat more comfortably with Lin Yi. But something hard was pressing down on her. You brought ham sausages? Xingyan asked subconsciously, but after she said that, she immediately realized that something was wrong. She also knew what she had grabbed. Her face immediately turned red, and she quickly let go of her hand. She turned around and snorted. Sure enough, pervert. That's a normal reaction. Lin Yi smiled bitterly, a little helpless. We're so close, and you smell so good. Xingyan's face reddened even more at Lin Yi's mention of her scent. I'm sleepy, I fell asleep. Lin Yi didn't know what to say. He shook his head and calmed himself down before channeling the second stage of the art of dragon mastery. Xingyan waited for a while, and felt a little apologetic when she saw that Lin Yi wasn't talking. She'd been in biology classes before, and she knew that this was a normal reaction from Lin Yi. He didn't do it on purpose, and it would have been a problem if he hadn't. But she didn't want to apologize, and so she fell asleep. Xingyan woke up in the latter half of the night. She'd drunk too much water earlier, and her body was reacting. She wanted to go to the bathroom, but it was pitch black outside. She hesitated for a moment before reaching out to touch Lin Yi. Lin Yi, what's wrong? Lin Yi asked, opening his eyes. Lin Yi opened his eyes all of a sudden, not the slightest bit sleepy on his face. Xingyan jumped. You're not asleep? Target equals, _blank. Chapter 1921. Oh, I'm resting. There aren't many people here. I'm afraid something might happen. Lin Yi said, not bothering to explain about his training. Other practitioners needed to sleep after all. Only the art of dragon mastery allowed him to train in the jade space without sleeping. Xingyan felt a little moved. Lin Yi didn't sleep, because he was afraid of danger. Xingyan felt a little embarrassed at the thought. She'd called him a pervert before. If he was a pervert, why didn't he do something to her when she was asleep? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called you that. Xingyan said. Called me that? Since when did you curse me? Lin Yi didn't know what Xingyan was talking about. Are you dreaming or something? No, it was before I slept. I called you a pervert. Xingyan said, a little embarrassed. Oh, it's nothing. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Oh right, why did you call me? Xingyan only remembered her goal after Lin Yi's reminder. I drank too much water, and I wanted to go out, but I'm a little scared. I see. Let's go, I'll stay with you. Lin Yi sat up, but realized that Xingyan might misunderstand if he said that. I mean, I'll be watching you from afar. Ugh. I don't mean watching you, I mean guarding you. Lin Yi realized that the more he said, the more ambiguous it got. He might as well not say it. Okay. Xingyan understood what Lin Yi meant. She walked out of the tent first, blushing a little. Xingyan looked left and right. She and Lin Yi had chosen a flat, empty space. It was precisely because of this that Lin Yi chose this place. There really wasn't anything to hide in if they wanted to go to the bathroom. Xingyan had no choice but to run towards the forest. She ran for a few hundred meters before disappearing into a thicket. Lin Yi followed slowly, but didn't get too close. He only needed to sense where Xingyan was. Lin Yi didn't use his consciousness to sense where Xingyan was either. He'd be able to see her clearly that way. Xingyan was in a hurry, but Lin Yi wasn't far from her. Wouldn't he be able to hear her if she were to make a sound that could be heard in the silence of the night? Xingyan couldn't pee at the thought of that embarrassing shushing sound. Lin Yi waited for a long time, but didn't hear any movement from Xingyan. It was a little strange, but he didn't want her to feel awkward, so he didn't ask or walk over. Instead, he entered the jade space and used his consciousness to sense what was going on in the distance. He saw Xingyan squatting there with a blushing face. Lin Yi quickly looked away, and just as Lin Yi was about to retract his gaze, he saw two people about 20 meters in front of Xingyan. Two people in camouflage clothes. They didn't stand out in the dark of the forest, but Linny could see them clearly with his consciousness. One of them was a Chinese, and the other was a foreigner with blonde hair. What were they doing here in the middle of the night? Thinking of this, Linny didn't retract his divine sense, but locked onto these two people. Audie, I've brought the goods. Do you have the money ready? It was the Chinese who spoke. The two seemed to have just met. Baldy, why are you here? Wasn't it Brother De who delivered the goods before? Audie recognized the man, but it wasn't the person he knew before. It was one of the people he knew, so he asked cautiously. Brother De has been sent to the Fire Wolf gang for a new mission. I'll be taking over here. The man called Baldy said proudly. From now on, I'll be in charge of the border drug trade. Oh, then I'll call you Baldy Bro from now on. Congratulations. The foreigner spoke fluent Chinese. Ha ha ha, you flatter me. Bald Wolf laughed. He was obviously happy about his promotion. Ah. Xingyan was nervous to begin with, and the sudden burst of laughter made her scream out of reflex. Baldy's voice was very soft, and Linny could only tell what they were saying through his lips. The laughter, however, was a little too loud in this quiet mountain. Xingyan didn't think that there would be other people around, and the voice clearly wasn't Lin Yi's. It was hoarse and unpleasant, and it was a man's voice. Xingyan screamed subconsciously, but someone covered her mouth before she could finish. Xingyan was even more shocked. She'd just heard the laughter, and now she was being kidnapped? But Lin Yi's voice rang in her ears. Don't worry, it's me. Xingyan relaxed when she heard it was Lin Yi, but now that she relaxed, all the pee she'd been holding in came out. Lin Yi was kneeling in front of her, covering her mouth, and her pee was all over Lin Yi's pants. Xingyan was embarrassed, but she couldn't control herself. She wanted to dig a hole in the ground and hide in it. How embarrassing was this? She'd let Lin Yi see her upper body, and now he'd seen her lower body, and now she'd peed all over him? But, although Lin Yi saw Xingyan pee all over himself, it was a rather romantic scene, but Lin Yi wasn't in the mood to peek. His attention was on the two people not far away. Lin Yi wasn't a nosy person, and what these two were doing here had nothing to do with him. But when Atiti mentioned Debro, it caught Lin Yi's attention. Wasn't Jiang Wen's brother in Jianda called Debro? Just when Lin Yi wanted to confirm if this Debro was in Jianda, the bald wolf's words confirmed Lin Yi's suspicions. Since the wolf mentioned the firewolves, then Debro had to be in Jianda. Since it was related to the firewolves and in Jianda, Lin Yi didn't mind creating some accidents for these two. They were people in gangs that had deep grudges against him. Xingyan's scream caught Otiti's attention as well, but it was dark on the mountain, and he couldn't see far. Xingyan was squatting on the ground, and there were bushes in front of her. They couldn't see each other at all. What's that sound? Otiti asked. Is it the border patrol? Chapter 1922. That shouldn't be the case. I've already asked around. These days are the military training days for Donghai Industry University, and the border guards are using this mountain as a training ground. There's no way they would be patrolling at this time. Baldy frowned. Donghai Industry University's military training wasn't a secret, and Baldy didn't need to ask around to get the information. It was absolutely true. Then could it be that there are students training nearby? Audie asked. That's impossible. We, the Red Conches, have been doing this for years, and we know the range of the training every year. This place is too far, and it's impossible for the students to come and go in 2 days. Those students aren't us, so how could they walk this far? Baldy shook his head. Maybe we heard wrongly. There's an owl nearby, and it sounded similar to the sound just now. If the border guards were here, then it would be a gunshot. You and I wouldn't be able to stand here and talk. You're right. Audie nodded after not hearing any strange noises for a long time. But at that moment the sound came again. Do. Goo. The sound came from Lin Yi's mouth, mimicking the sound of an owl. Fuck, it really is an owl. That scared me to death. Audie heard it clearly this time and shook his head. No matter what, let's hurry up and trade. The goods are here. Check them. Baldy placed a black suitcase in front of Audie. Here, this is the money. Check it too. Audie handed a suitcase to Baldy. The two were old partners, and they didn't need to be too cautious. They checked the contents of the suitcase and closed it after finding nothing wrong. Lenny saw the contents of the suitcase clearly. One was filled with drugs, and the other was filled with US dollars. Lenny wasn't interested in the drugs, but he was interested in the US dollars. Although he had extorted $2 billion from Jiang Wen, Lenny didn't have much to spend since Fatty Lai had to build his company. This suitcase of US dollars could help alleviate some of the financial pressure on Lin Yi. Most importantly, Lin Yi suddenly thought of Xiaoka from the orphanage. She probably needed money, right? With that in mind, Lin Yi decided that he was going to take advantage of the situation. He whispered into Xinyan's ear. There's two bad guys. Stay here and don't move. I'll take care of them. Xinyan wasn't scared anymore. All that was left was shyness. She nodded. It was only then that Lin Yi remembered that he was still covering Xinyan's mouth. He quickly let go and walked over to the two drug dealers. However, the two drug dealers were still talking about something after the transaction. I say, Brother Bald Wolf, why are there fewer and fewer goods recently? We have a shortage over there. Can you increase the supply? Audie asked as he weighed the suitcase in his hand. Our original partner, Houseu, has some problems. Without the support of Houseu's masters, our authority in the Golden Triangle has been declining. Bald Wolf sighed. I've already talked to the boss. He'll talk to the higher-ups and see if they can send a few practitioners over. That way we can regain our authority. Alright, this is your gang's internal matter. I have no right to interfere. I'll be leaving first. I don't feel at ease staying at the border for another minute. Audie nodded and prepared to leave. Bald Wolf took the money and prepared to leave as well. However, before the two of them could take a step, they groaned and fell to the ground. These people weren't even practitioners, and Lin Yi could knock them out without a sound. Lin Yi didn't kill them. Although it was easy for Lin Yi to kill these two, Lin Yi still wanted to ask Bald Wolf a few questions. Lin Yi didn't want to force a confession out of someone like Baldy. He took out a couple of needles and stuck them into Baldy's head, waking him up as well. His eyes were a little glazed over. I'll ask you a few questions. Answer them one by one. Don't hide anything, Lin Yi said sternly. Yes. Bald Wolf seemed to have entered a hypnotic state. He had lost his consciousness. This method was taught to Lin Yi by his master. Although it was effective, it could only be used on low-leveled people. After all, a practitioner's will was extremely strong. Even golden-class practitioners had strong spiritual power. Lin Yi couldn't hypnotize them with this method. However, this method was the fastest and most effective way to deal with such a small fry. However, after using it, there would be a certain side effect, which was that the person would forget a part of their memory. This memory varied from person to person. The shortest would be 1 day, and the longest would be 4 to 5 days. Therefore, they would not remember being hypnotized at all. Lin Yi planned on using the same method on the foreigner, making them forget what happened recently. That way, he'd be able to take the box of dollars without anyone noticing. As for these two, Lin Yi planned on handing them over to Chun Yutian for him, Yang Huaijuan, and Lingshan to work together. After all, capturing so many drugs was a huge achievement. Lin Yi didn't mind letting these two use their full potential. It'd be a waste to just kill them. What's your name? What do you do? What organization do you belong to? Lin Yi asked. I'm Tu Lang, Bald Wolf in the underworld. I'm in charge of the drug trade for Red Conches. Bald Wolf said. Where's the headquarters of Red Conches? How many people are there? Who's the boss? What's his relationship with the Fire Wolves? Lin Yi asked. The headquarters of Red Conches is overseas. I don't know where it is. The one in China is just a branch, Bald Wolf said. Bald Wolf said. The Red Conch branch is in Qingrun City. The first master is dead, and the second master has been arrested. Currently the third master is in charge. I don't know the third master's name, because everyone calls him third master. Our red conches and the fire wolves are brother gangs. We help each other, but I don't know the details. Linny was surprised by Bald Wolf's words. He didn't expect Red Conch's headquarters to be overseas. He didn't even know where it was. The one in China was just a branch. According to what he said, the big boss that Feng Tianlong killed was just a person in charge of Red Conch's branch. Red Conch's had a lot of resources. Is there a cultivator guarding the Red Conch? What's the highest level? Linny asked. The third boss is a practitioner himself. He's at the peak of the late phase of the mystic class. Other than him, there's only one master at the early phase of the golden class. Bald Wolf said. Red Conch's business is with House Yu. All the masters are from House Yu. Chapter 1923. Linny nodded. It seemed like this Red Conch's wasn't that strong. The strongest was only a mystic class. Of course, this was only the strength of the branch. No one knew how strong the headquarters was. But Linny didn't suspect that he was lying. Putting aside the fact that he couldn't lie in this situation, just from what he said to Atiti, it was obvious that House Yu was destroyed, and Red Conch's drug business was affected as well. Their power in the Golden Triangle was reduced. Tell me the address of the Fire Wolf Gang's branch. Linny said. I don't know the address. I'm just the person in charge of the drug business in Donghai. Every time I go to a meeting, it's the Conch Bar in Qingrun City. That's a small base for the Red Conches, Baldy said. Conch Bar. Linny was surprised. These Red Conches were quite daring. They made a bar and called it Conch Bar. Weren't they afraid of being exposed? But Linny thought that no one would connect this Conch Bar with the Red Conches. As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. This was probably the case. Who else is in charge of the drug business? Linny continued. It used to be Brother Da. We used to work under the third head. Even when we were working with House Yu, he was the one who handled the whole thing. Now that he's in charge, he's still the one in charge, Baldy said. Linny's heart skipped a beat. It seemed like Armadillo's revenge was on this third head in charge. This guy was the mastermind behind House Yu's collaboration. No wonder there was no news from the second head in charge when they captured him. He wasn't in charge of the drug trafficking. Alright, you can sleep now. Linny had asked everything he needed to ask. If he asked more, Baldy wouldn't know. He had limited knowledge. He was just a small character. As for Atiti, Linny did the same. But Atiti was a foreign gang leader. Linny wouldn't be able to get anything useful out of him. Linny wasn't interested in the gang at all. He let Atiti go back to sleep. After that, Linny walked toward Xinyan. Linny poked the two with needles. They wouldn't wake up for at least 2 hours. Xinyan's heart tightened when she heard footsteps. She was so nervous that she forgot to pull up her pants. She was just squatting there. She was afraid that something would happen to Linny. But Linny and the two were talking softly. Xinyan couldn't hear them, and she didn't dare stand up. Linny, is that you? Xinyan said, suppressing her fear as the footsteps got closer. Yes, Xinyan, it's me. Linny said as he walked up to Xinyan. What he saw stunned Linny. Ugh, what's wrong? Xinyan stood up, pausing at the look on Linny's face. A gust of wind blew past, and Xinyan realized that she'd forgotten to pull up her pants. Embarrassed, she quickly pulled them up. I forgot. Haha, I know. I don't think you're trying to seduce me. Linny joked. You. Xinyan blushed. She knew that Linny was joking. She quickly changed the topic. Right, Linny, those people. They're knocked out. But I'm afraid we'll have to go back tonight. Linny said. Oh. Xinyan nodded. Alright, I've rested enough, and my stamina is back. I'll contact Instructor Chin. Maybe we don't have to walk back. Someone's going to pick us up. Linny smiled. Right, your pants. Xingyan said apologetically when she saw the wet patch on Lin Yi's pants. She'd puked on Lin Yi's pants. And now she'd peed on Lin Yi's pants. Did Lin Yi think she was a meddlesome girl? Oh, it's fine. There's no smell. I'll be fine after I dry it. Lin Yi didn't mind. Xingyan was embarrassed and didn't say anything else. At the foot of the mountain, in the SUV, a soldier in charge of monitoring the coordinates saw the blinking on the screen. He immediately reported to Chen Yutian, who was taking a nap. Captain Chen, we have a situation. Oh, Chen Yutian woke up immediately. He looked at the screen, but the blinking coordinates stunned him. It was Lin Yi and Wang Xingyan's coordinates. Chen Yutian thought that any of the students who participated in the field training could be in trouble. Only Lin Yi wouldn't be in trouble. Lin Yi was an Earth class. It would be unbelievable if a jungle like this could stop Lin Yi. But it just had to be Lin Yi's coordinates. If something happened to Lin Yi, it would be a huge problem. Chen Yutian didn't dare to underestimate it. He quickly ordered, "Get the rescue helicopter ready. I'll go check it out myself." Yes. A soldier on standby received the order and went to get the helicopter ready. Chen Yutian quickly got out of the SUV and walked towards the helicopter. However, Chen Yutian refused everyone else to get on the helicopter. He was going to fly the helicopter alone to get Lin Yi. If Lin Yi was in danger, ordinary people wouldn't be able to help. Chen Yutian was the strongest here, and it was the safest for him to go alone. Although it was useless for him to go if it was something even Lin Yi couldn't handle. Since Lin Yi sent out the signal, it meant that Lin Yi should be fine. To keep it a secret, Chen Yutian decided to go alone. The speed of the helicopter was much faster than walking. Soon, Chen Yutian got close to the coordinates. He saw Lin Yi's tent. There was an empty space near the tent, and Chen Yutian landed the helicopter without hesitation. However, what surprised Chen Yutian was that Lin Yi and Wang Xingyan were perfectly fine after he got off the helicopter. They were waiting for him at the tent, and under Lin Yi's feet, there were two strangers lying on the ground. He didn't know if they were dead or alive. "Boss." Chen Yutian called Lin Yi boss when there were no outsiders around. Wang Xingyan looked at Chen Yutian in surprise, and then looked at Lin Yi. Instructor Chen called Lin Yi boss? What was going on? Although she was confused, she didn't ask. "Yutian, there are two drug dealers here." "They were trading, and I caught them." Lin Yi pointed at the two people on the ground. Chapter 1936, Back to School. "What? Drug dealers?" Chen Yutian's eyes widened in shock. He quickly ran over. "Boss, what's going on? Why are there drug dealers here?" "It's like this," Lin Yi said and told Chen Yutian about the drug dealers. Of course, he left out the part about Wang Xingyan going to the washroom. "I used silver needles to deal with these two people. And I asked around about the people behind them. They are from the Red Conch organization. But they will have temporary amnesia. Perhaps they won't remember the trade." Chen Yutian nodded. He knew about Lin Yi's methods, and he knew why Lin Yi wanted to know about the Red Conch organization. He didn't ask much. Temporary amnesia didn't matter as long as these two were drug dealers. The details of the trade weren't important. "This is the box of drugs, right?" Chen Yutian looked at the suitcase on the ground and asked. "Yes, you can bring him back, but he'll be working on this case with Huaijuan and Ling Shan. They've just come to Donghai and solved this case. They're pretty stable now," Lin Yi said to Yutian. "No problem." Chen Yutian nodded. He didn't even ask if there was cash. From Yutian's point of view, the drug dealers would transfer money over the phone. Even if there was cash, he wouldn't ask if it was taken away by Lin Yi. "Boss, why don't you and sis-in-law Xingyan take the helicopter back? Your mission is considered complete, and you caught two drug dealers. If it wasn't for you not wanting to be famous, you could get a lot of points for this contribution. So you guys are the first to complete the mission." Okay, I want to go back too." Lin Yi nodded. Xingyan found it very weird that Instructor Chen was calling her sis-in-law, but she didn't go out of her way to correct him. Her relationship with Lin Yi was getting more and more beyond friendship. Lin Yi packed up quickly, and Chen Yutian came over to help him take down the tent. The two drug dealers were thrown into the car, and the helicopter started flying down the mountain. No one objected to the fact that Lin Yi and Xingyan took the first place. They all knew that Lin Yi's contribution alone was worth more than the first place's points. But Lin Yi kept a low profile and didn't want to announce it. Chen Yutian called Huaijuan and told him to bring the 2 drug dealers back. Usually, the border guards would hand the drug dealers over to the local police for trial. Huaijuan was speechless when he heard that Lin Yi caught 2 drug dealers on the way up the mountain. But he was grateful that Lin Yi wanted him and Lingshan to do something. He drove over the night and brought the 2 drug dealers away. As for the aftermath, Lin Yi and Yutian didn't have to worry about it. Huaijuan felt weird when he brought the drug dealers away. Lin Yi was too amazing. He just talked to him about the drug dealers and the red conch a few days ago, and he brought the drug dealers back just like that? Lingshan said that as long as the case was handed to Lin Yi, there would be no case that couldn't be solved. Huaijuan was convinced that it was true. Huaijuan knew that Lin Yi was amazing, but he didn't expect him to be this amazing. Finding an enemy in the forest and finding a criminal in the city were 2 different things. And the methods of investigation were different as well. But for Lin Yi it was the same. It was still early, and Yutian called for an off-road vehicle for Lin Yi and Xingyan to get in and rest. The car was spacious, and sleeping was no problem after putting down the seats. But Lin Yi's first thought was to have sex in the car. Xingyan thought of it as well, but she didn't say anything. She knew her relationship with Lin Yi very well, and although they did flirt a lot, they were actually innocent. Because of the drug dealers on the mountain, the following faculties canceled the field training and moved on to the next step, the military boxing competition. After the military training, everyone returned to school, and the freshman party was about to begin. The freshmen's first semester wasn't very stressful. There were no specialized classes, and most of the time was filled with activities. Military training, freshman party, student council election, extracurricular club registration, sports day, art festival, and so on. The freshman party of the medicine faculty was a big problem every year. The programs at the gala were generally produced by majors, not by classes. Therefore, a major usually had at least 5 classes. At the very least, they could come up with a program. However, the pharmaceutical department only had 1 class, and the number of people in that class was very small. If they had to come up with a program, this problem would fall on the shoulders of every class monitor. Bai Weitua even made a bet with Zhang Duopan. Whoever got the highest score in the freshman party would be able to pursue Himeiwa, and whoever got the lowest score would be automatically eliminated. Big brother Lin Xiaodao Shengji, can you help me think of a way? As soon as the military training ended, and they returned to the dormitory, Bai Weitua was anxious. He hadn't thought about it before, but when it really came, he realized how difficult it was to organize a program. You sing well, go and sing a solo. Song Xiaodao said helplessly, we don't have artistic cells. Asking us to help you think of a way is equivalent to harming you. Solo. Bai Weitua shook his head. Although his singing was very good, it wasn't particularly outstanding. If it was in a party with fewer people, such as a junior high school art festival, it was still possible to get a place. But on a university campus where there were many talented people, a solo had no special characteristics, and it was very difficult to get a place. Moreover, Bai Weitua also knew that in the school, in the past freshman parties, it was usually a group program that won a place, not an individual program. As a freshman, being able to unite the group was a real ability, and individual ability was nothing. Then let's sing a duet. If you can sing, then sing. If you can't sing, then just harmonize or lip sync. Anyone can do it, Lin Yi said. Bai Weitua was stunned, but really Lin Yi's move was a good one. This was because Bai Weitua had also seen some celebrity concerts. The celebrity was the main host in the front, And there was a choir at the back to help harmonize, or sing a small part. If he was the main singer, and then let the students in the class go up to harmonize, this could be considered a group program. Thinking of this, Baiweitua's eyes lit up. Then let's do it this way. I'll go back and talk to the students. Chapter 1924. Yeah, go get ready. I'll be heading out for a bit. Linny received a text from the miss, saying that Faubert was coming over. Alright Lin bro, go do what you need to do, Baiweitua said as he prepared to contact his classmates. As Baiweitua spoke, he was ready to contact his classmates. Everyone was in the same dormitory building, and it was also on the same floor. It was very convenient to contact them. Linny left the dorm and went to the car park. The miss and Shu weren't there yet, but he was surprised to see Xingyan there. Xingyan had changed back into her old clothes, and Linny was still in his camouflage uniform. Xingyan was a little surprised, but then she remembered that she had spit on Lin Yi's pants. People might misunderstand if word got out. But wasn't there still her pee on his clothes? Xingyan's face reddened at the thought. Xingyan, what's wrong? Linny was a little puzzled. Why was this girl blushing when she saw him? She wasn't this shy even when they were sleeping in the same bed. And nothing. I need to go out and buy some stuff. Xingyan didn't hide anything in front of Lin Yi. She took out a car key and walked up to one of the cars. It was the same one she'd driven on the business street. Linny had seen it before. Book Ocean Pavilion Net. Buy stuff. Linny blinked. Was she going to buy stuff for the ladies? Why else would she blush? But Linny didn't ask. Are you going to the supermarket? Supermarket? Xingyan shook her head. No. I need to go to the hospital. I'm cold all over. I think I'm going to catch a cold. Xingyan didn't wear much during the military training, but she managed to persevere. She didn't expect to catch a cold when she got back to school. She wanted to go to the hospital as soon as possible. She didn't want to get sick right after school started. Cold, Linny said. Then you don't have to go. I'll help you take a look. Linny was a doctor after all. Treating minor illnesses like this was a piece of cake for him. Wang Xingyan was his friend, so he didn't mind helping her out. As for the others, Linny wouldn't be so kind. Yes, you're a doctor. Xingyan suddenly remembered that Linny was a doctor. Back in the business district, Linny had quickly healed that fainted old man and helped her out. Moreover, when he was on the way to the military training, he got carsick and vomited, but Linny quickly cured him. Go to your car. Linny knew that the miss and Shu would be here soon, and it wouldn't be good if Xingyan got in the car. It would be better for him to get treated in Xingyan's car. Book C Pavilion Net. Okay. Xingyan nodded without hesitation. The two got into Xingyan's car, but this scene was witnessed by the miss and Shu, who were walking over from not too far away. Yao Yao. The school forum said that Wang Xingyan and Shield Bro had sex on the roof. It's so cool, but shouldn't we do some damage? Yushu said. Mengyao, on the other hand, had a dark expression on her face. The school's BBS seemed to be telling the truth. And not only that, it said that Lin Yi and Wang Xingyan had sex in the gutter behind the barracks, and that Lin Yi had put his hand under Xingyan's shirt on the way to military training, and that Xingyan had even helped him do it with her mouth. But these were all hearsay, and there was no proof. Mengyao would rather believe these rumors, because she didn't think that Lin Yi was such a perverted person. She and Shu had lived with him for so long, and Lin Yi hadn't done anything out of line. Even when they were naked, he didn't lose his mind. When he was with Tang Yin and Xiao Xiao, the most intimate thing he did was holding hands. He just met Wang Xingyan not long ago. How could he be this close? Shu, what sex? How is that possible? If he wanted to have sex, he would have done it a long time ago. Why would he wait until now? I think it's most likely Xingyan's pursuers who saw how close Lin Yi and Xingyan got, and started slandering them. Mingyao said. Even if that's not the case, Xingyan's still one of the prettiest girls in the first year. It's normal for there to be rumors about her. It's not impossible for people to start rumors like that. Didn't that little can say the same thing about you and her? Didn't you get an abortion? Oh, you're right. Yushu nodded. She was about to say something when she raised her head to see Lin Yi and Wang Xingyan getting into a sports car. She exclaimed, Yao Yao, isn't that Shield bro? Meng Yao's face turned green. She was just defending Lin Yi, and Lin Yi got into someone else's car. How could she accept this? But Meng Yao still said, maybe they're going to get something or take a break. Oh, I'll send Detective Holmes to investigate then. With that, Yushu ran over to the scene. Xingyan's sports car had a film around it, so if you didn't lie down in front of it, you wouldn't be able to see what was going on inside. Xingyan, on the other hand, was too shy to take off her clothes in front of Lin Yi, so Lin Yi had no choice but to start massaging her under her clothes. Ah! Xingyan couldn't help but moan in comfort. Lin Yi's massage technique didn't look special, but Xingyan had never felt so relaxed before. Xingyan's face reddened a little after that moaning. Why did that sound so weird? Was he doing something? But Lin Yi didn't seem to mind at all. He was still focused on massaging her. Xingyan, on the other hand, relaxed a little. She couldn't hold it in any longer, and started moaning in comfort. Yushu couldn't see what was going on inside the car, so she could only lean her head against the car window and look inside. Xingyan's moans of comfort were heard before she could get a good look. She took a closer look, and saw that Lin Yi's hand was moving around inside Xingyan's clothes, as if he was. Yushu was a little taken aback. Since when did Shield Bro get this good? She'd definitely let him touch her when she got back. Lin Yi was so focused on massaging Xingyan that he didn't even notice the person lying on the car's side. They were in the school's parking lot, after all, and there shouldn't be anyone peeking at them, right? Besides, the Jade wouldn't give any warnings, so there shouldn't be any danger. Yushu was one of Lin Yi's teammates, anyway. The Jade wouldn't give any warnings, even if it saw her coming. Yushu remembered her mission after a while, and quickly ran back to report to Meng Yao. Target equals _blank. Chapter 1925. What's wrong, Shu? Why's your face so red? Meng Yao frowned. Could it be that Lin Yi and Xingyan were doing something shameful in the car? Shield Bro was touching Xingyan in the car, and Xingyan was there. Book Ocean Pavilion Net. Yushu said. Meng Yao didn't know what to say. Can't you use a more elegant word to replace it? But Yushu's words ignited Meng Yao's heart. She didn't know if it was because of Tang Yun or something else, but she rushed to Xingyan's car and pulled the door open. She roared at Lin Yi. Lin Yi, you bastard. Get the fuck out of the car. How can you face Xiao Xiao like this? Since she couldn't mention Tang Yun, she could only use Xiao Xiao. Luckily, she wasn't that impulsive. Lin Yi and Xingyan didn't lock the car door, and Meng Yao didn't think that she would be able to pull the door open. She looked into the car and saw that Lin Yi's hand was still in Xingyan's clothes. Meng Yao was about to explode from anger. Could it be that the news was true? Yao Yao, what's wrong with you? Lin Yi paused as he looked at the furious Meng Yao, not understanding what was going on. Book Ocean Pavilion Net. Lin Yi didn't know what was going on, but Xingyan understood why Meng Yao was angry. She must have misunderstood that Lin Yi and her were doing something shameful here. She blushed and lowered her head, not daring to look at Meng Yao and the others. Shield Bro, you touched Xingyan in the car. Yao Yao's jealous. Yushu said. Bullshit. Meng Yao glared at Yushu. I'm just feeling sorry for Xiao Xiao, she's training, and you're here hitting on girls. Lin Yi finally understood why Meng Yao was so angry. She'd misunderstood him and Xingyan. Xingyan caught a cold. I'll give her a massage, so she doesn't need to go to the hospital for an injection. Lin Yi said. Because there are many people outside, I chose to do it in the car. Lin Yi explained. Of course, this was only for Meng Yao. If it were someone else, Lin Yi wouldn't even bother explaining. Ah, Meng Yao knew that Lin Yi wasn't someone who liked to lie. If he said that, then it had to be true. He'd admitted it when he brought Tang Yin and Xiao Xiao back. And it didn't matter if Meng Yao wanted it or not. Lin Yi had done it, and he wouldn't hide anything. So Lin Yi and Xin Yan were probably misunderstood by her. With that thought, Meng Yao calmed down and looked at Xin Yan. She realized that although Lin Yi's hand was inside Xin Yan's shirt, it was on her back. Xin Yan's bra was still on her body, and there were no signs of her pants being taken off or undone. It seemed like Lin Yi was really treating Xin Yan. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you guys. I was just worried about Xiao Xiao. I'm sorry. Book Ocean Pavilion. Meng Yao was a little awkward. It'd be fine if it was just Lin Yi. But the problem was that she'd misunderstood Xin Yan as well. The two of them weren't familiar with each other, and it wasn't right for them to make such a big mistake. Wang Xingyan didn't think that Meng Yao would apologize immediately after realizing her wrongdoing. This was out of her expectations. Although there was nothing going on between her and Lin Yi, letting a boy massage her body was a very ambiguous thing to do. She felt a little guilty. Xingyan would have never imagined letting a boy touch her body before. But it was so natural now that she was with Lin Yi. She felt like she was having an affair. As if she was a girl who didn't have any self-respect. And letting a boy touch her like that. Not only did she not feel conflicted, but it actually felt good. Xingyan knew that it was because of Lin Yi's skill in massaging, but it also proved that she didn't mind Lin Yi doing it. Even if Meng Yao were to scold her, Xingyan wouldn't say a word. It's nothing. I know Xiao Xiao too. I'm just good friends with Lin Yi. Xingyan explained subconsciously. And if that's the case, you guys can continue. Although Meng Yao felt that Lin Yi touching Xingyan's body was inappropriate, she didn't stop him when she thought that Lin Yi was treating a patient. After all, when she was poisoned, she took off her clothes and let Lin Yi treat her. And what was even more embarrassing was that she peed on Lin Yi's face. She and Lin Yi were even worse, but weren't she and Lin Yi friends? What Meng Yao didn't know was that Xingyan had already let Lin Yi see her naked, and that she peed on Lin Yi as well. Who knew what she would think if she knew? Oh shield bro, I've got a cold too. You should touch Shu later, give her a massage. Yushu was curious why Xingyan felt so good just now, even moaning happily. She wanted to give it a try. Shu, Meng Yao grabbed Shu's ear and pulled her to the side, closing the car door for Lin Yi and Xingyan. Xingyan was a little speechless at Yushu. Wasn't this girl a little too open? How could he say such a thing in public? But she was a girl who dared to love and hate, stronger than she was. Xingyan couldn't help but smile bitterly at the thought of her own life and her engagement. With Meng Yao and Yushu outside, Xingyan didn't dare to moan anymore. She bit her lips and endured the pleasure, continuing to enjoy Lin Yi's massage. She didn't know why, but Xingyan felt a little excited. Was it because Meng Yao and Yushu were standing outside the car? Ah! Xingyan's mind wandered, and she couldn't keep her mouth shut. She didn't want to hold it in anymore though. Once was the same thing, twice wasn't much. She'd get used to it after the third time. Because they were close, Xingyan's moans traveled into Meng Yao and Yushu's ears. Yao Yao, listen, that Fox Wang seems to be having a good time. Yushu said, don't give people random nicknames. Meng Yao frowned. She knew that Xingyan was moaning because of Lin Yi's massage. But was it really that good? Oh, Yushu said. But I think she's interested in Shield bro. Xiao Xiao already told him to find a big wife, so why should we care? Meng Yao shook her head, remembering Xiao Xiao's words. Oh, even if he wants to find a big wife, we need to keep an eye on him. Even if Fox Wang wants to be Shield bro's big wife, she'd have to please us first. We need to keep an eye on Xiao Xiao, Yushu said. Chapter 1926. Yeah. Meng Yao's eyes lit up. Xiao Xiao telling Lin Yi to find a main wife wasn't wrong. But she and Shu had to help her check as well. Even without Xiao Xiao, they still had to complete Tang Yan's request. Inside the car, Xingyan felt more and more comfortable. It was as if she was going to fly into the sky, and she was sweating as well. She had to admit that treating a cold like this was a pleasure, 1,000 times better than getting in 4 drip. I'm done. Lenny finished the massage. Lenny had wanted to use the needles, but Lenny threw them into his backpack after dealing with the 2 drug dealers. His backpack was in the dorm now, and Lenny didn't bother going back to get it. For a cold like this, there was no difference between massage and needles. Ah, it's done. It was only then that Xingyan realized that she was drenched in sweat, and that her clothes were all wet. But she did feel refreshed, and the dizziness she'd been feeling before was gone. She didn't want to leave though. She felt like the treatment was going a little too fast. But she cursed herself for being shameless. Was she craving the feeling of Lin Yi's hands massaging her body? Xingyan's face was a little unreadable, and Lin Yi was a little confused. Why do you look a little weird? Am I not completely healed? Xingyan wanted to say, you're not healed? Check me again. But she didn't dare to do that. She felt that what she'd done these past few days had already crossed the line, even more so than anything she'd done since she was young. If she continued like this, wouldn't she become a bad girl? I'm healed. I'm just sweating a little, and I'm a little hot. I need to cool down, Xingyan said quickly. Book Ocean Pavilion. Net. Cool down. That won't do. Stay in the car and don't go out. Wait until the sweat is gone before you go out. Otherwise, you will catch a cold again, Lin Yi said. Okay, you go do what you need to do then. I'll be fine in the car, Xingyan said. Okay, then I'll leave first. Call me anytime if you need anything. Lin Yi nodded. Since Xingyan's illness was cured, there was no point in him staying here any longer. Thanks, Xingyan said. What's there to thank? We're comrades. Lin Yi laughed. Yeah, we're comrades in arms, Xingyan said with a smile. Yeah, she and Lin Yi were comrades in arms. What was there to be so particular about? Lin Yi got off the car and nodded to Miss and Shu. Okay, let's go. Okay. Faubert said that he's inspecting the market in Donghai. Dad wants to expand his business here, so that Pengzhan Industries can grow and see us more often, Meng Yao said. Faubert said that we'll call him when we get home and he'll come over. Then let's go back and wait for him now. Right, did you tell Grandma, son? Let her prepare some food, and we'll eat at home tonight, Lin Yi said. I already told Grandma, son, and she's probably preparing it already, Meng Yao said. Right, Lin Yi? Why are you still wearing the uniform from the military training? Oh, the previous set of clothes was dirty, and I didn't have time to wash it, so I didn't change it, Lin Yi said. Meng Yao nodded and didn't say anything. The 3 got in the car, and Lin Yi drove back to the Shuashang district. As expected, when they got back to the villa, Grandma's son was busy in the kitchen. The fragrance from the kitchen made people salivate. Grandma's son is really good. Her cooking is even better than those chefs in the hotels. Meng Yao felt that it was really a happy thing to have Grandma's son as a housekeeper here. Lin Yi nodded. Lin Yi was also very confused about this. Grandma's son was a scavenger. How could she have such cooking skills? This was really a strange thing. But the most important thing was that Grandma's son's memory of the past was a little blurry. She couldn't remember the past, so Lin Yi knew nothing about her background. But one thing was certain. From all the signs, Grandma's son should be a person with a story. But for some reason, she lost her memory. Although she lost her memory, she didn't lose her cooking skills. It was probably an instinct. Of course, Lin Yi didn't deliberately ask about Grandma's son's past, nor did he try to help her recover her memory. Everyone had their own secrets and difficulties, and he didn't want to delve into it. What if it was a memory that Grandma's son didn't want to remember? Shaking his head, Lin Yi called Faubert. Little E, have you gone back? Faubert's voice came from the other side of the phone. Faubert, we're back. We're in the villa in the Shuashang district. Lin Yi said, where are you? I looked at the location of a few buildings that are being sold and took some pictures. I'm going to discuss with Mr. Chu to see if it's a suitable place to set up a branch company in Donghai City. Faubert said, it's almost done now. I'll go over now. You can go to the villa area in the Shueshang district. My Jeep is parked outside the villa. It's that one, Linny said. Okay, I'll go over now, Faubert said. After hanging up the phone, Grandma's son came out with a plate of spicy chicken and placed it on the table. It was really delicious. It made people salivate at first glance. Mr. Lin, Miss Chu, when will the guests arrive? There are also a few hot dishes. It's better to eat them while they're hot, Grandma's son asked. They'll be here soon. They're not guests. They're all family. It's the housekeeper from Songshan City. Grandma's son, I told you before, Linny said. Ah, Grandma's son heard that it was Faubert. She suddenly blushed. She didn't know what to do. Just like that. From her point of view, Linny just said it casually last time. She would forget about it after a few days. She didn't expect Lin Yi to bring it up again. Grandma's son didn't know what to do. She wasn't ready yet. Hee, it's just a meeting. There's no other meaning. Get to know each other first. You're both housekeepers. You need to get to know each other. Linny said. Yeah, Grandma Sunday Faubert is actually a very good person. Mingyao also added. In fact, if Faubert and Grandma's son could be together, it would be a good thing. Not only would Faubert not be lonely, but Grandma's son would also have a companion. Plus, they were all family. There wouldn't be any problems. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.